Welcome to the Unheard Cries of a Mother, the podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered stories of motherhood, the joys, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the triumphs. Here, we amplify voices that too often go unheard, shining a light on the incredible strength, resilience, and love of mothers around the world. I'm your host, Sabrina Ben-Salmi, and I invite you to join us as we uncover the stories behind the smiles, share lessons learned, and create a community that uplifts, supports, and inspires. Let's honor the unheard cries and celebrate the silent victories of motherhood together. Ekua, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in this space. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm going to jump straight in with. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Oh, sorry, I heard something come through. So I'm going to jump straight in with my first question. And the first question I have for you is, can you share a pivotal moment in your motherhood journey that shaped who you are today?
ooh, that's a big one. These in-depth questions. For me, it's been quite a topsy-turvy kind of situation in the sense that I I was the kid that when I was really young, because I was the oldest grandchild, babysat everybody, literally everybody. And so I was the one that, yes, I was going to have a big family, have loads of children and things like that. That because I loved being around kids, literally loved and still love being around kids. And so when I got married, that was my thing. Like that was what I was going to do, have a really nice family. And then I realized that there was some fertility issues. So it wasn't possible to have the family that I, in my mind, had created and dreamed about. And then also because I was working in social care, residential with children with emotional behavioural difficulties that were struggling to be in families. So I was looking after kids since I was probably about 16. So there was that kind of emotional planning that had happened. Like you get married, I'm also from an African family, so then you have kids and it's the whole. And so when that didn't happen, I think it knocked my confidence a lot. And also I was really good at my job and people were just like sort of like, oh, you're gonna be an amazing mum, you're gonna be an amazing mum. And then it didn't happen that way. And then on top of that, I was godmother to I don't know how many kids. I lost count at one stage. And so people were like coming to me with advice, oh, I'm struggling with my kid, what should I do? This, that, and the third. And then it starts where your friends are able to have kids. And then initially it's like, oh, it'll work out, it'll work out. And you have other friends who also have infertility issues. And then one by one, they start having children. And you're like, okay, so what's wrong with me? What's happening? And then there's that emotional turmoil that happens. And then if people initially start out being very supportive, and then it goes on for a while, and then people get very uncomfortable because they don't know what to say. And I think that climaxed in one of my friends saying to me, no, we went to a dinner and then I think another friend came and congratulated her. And I was like, hang on, thought we were really close. How come she knows and I don't know? And then she got very upset and very emotional. And she said to me, I know what you're going through. Because at that point I was doing IVF and I didn't want to burden you with this. And I said, but how is that a burden? Like to sharing your joy and stuff. How's that burden? And she immediately broke down and said, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about it like that. I just thought that us having kids and that must be difficult for you. And it was, but the joy of seeing somebody you love and care about bring the joy of life into the world kind of counterbalances that. It's not a kind of, I'm so jealous that you have it and I don't have it. It's kind of like, no, I'm happy for you and I get to be an auntie again and I can kind of live vicariously through you and come steal them every weekend and things like that. So it wasn't, but people find it really difficult to deal with. So I had to sort of voice that and say, no, guys, and I've always had a good bunch of friends and they were very supportive. I think the strain of that and a lot of other things meant that my first marriage didn't work out. And then I met my current husband, and he already had 4 children. Funnily enough, that was the number of children that I said I wanted. And so then it was that thing of trying to blend a family. So you're coming into a family environment. And when I don't know what the term now is, like bonus mother, when my bonus kids came into my life, it was like they were adults already. And I think that was good in a way because they were very vocal about how they felt, in a positive and in a negative way, but it was needed because if we were going to build a family, then we had to be, everybody had to be on the same page. So my journey of kind of motherhood is not the straightforward one that most people have. It's been, miscarriages, it's been IVF fails, it's been looking after other people's children for the best part of, oh, I feel really old now, sort of 25 plus years, and supporting other people in my work. So it's been in my work life and in my private life. But I don't think I'd change anything because I needed that strength and that resilience and the sense of I've been through so much that I can get through this, because I needed my kids to believe that I wasn't going anywhere. Whatever struggles there were, I was going to stay, because they'd missed out on that consistency in their earlier lives. And so they needed me to be totally committed. And it wasn't easy. There are times when I'd get really emotional and I get really sad, like, I'm being nice to them. Why don't they like me? But I think for them, it wasn't a case of liking me. It was almost a case of, we've lost somebody precious before. It's going to take a lot for us to trust you. And I had to be consistent. I had to trust in my faith. I had to trust in my husband. I had to trust in the process. And it was a long process. And so, and it wasn't always smooth. And there were times when I was like, oh, what am I doing here? This is so much hard work. Plus, I've got to go to work and do the same thing again. It was like, but I wouldn't change anything because now I'm stronger for it and I have a better sense of who I am.
I want to thank you for openly sharing your story. And what stands out for me is that motherhood is never a straightforward process. We all arrive at motherhood differently, but I love the story about your bonus children. I think adults, young adults, teenagers, they push out the boat, they push the boundaries to see if there's something that will make you go. And they
Mm-hmm.
throw everything at you. And in the end, they realize, wow, you do love me because you haven't left. I've screamed at you, I've shouted at you. They've kind of put you through that military test to say, okay, well, you stuck it out. We'll make this through. And motherhood is not a bed of roses every day. It's not laughter every day. The tears, the pain, the sacrifices is all part of it. So it's very interesting the way you shared your beautiful story, especially with your friends, being so considerate to consider how you might respond and caring enough. But for you also to just give them that permission to say, I've actually worked through my own process and you don't have to hide these things from me because, I'm just as happy to see my new niece or nephew and enjoy that aspect. And it's quite interesting. The more I speak to mums, the more I realize is that our motherhood journey doesn't start when we birth our children or have our bonus children. Often we've been looking after children our whole lives for as young as we can remember. So it's just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing.
It's kind of nice, like you say. I don't think anybody's journey is the same, and I think we're a very resilient bunch, but we don't realize how resilient you are when it's happening. You just like, okay, I'll get through it one step at a time. And then and we don't really, that's why I like sort of like your questions and stuff, because we never really look back and go, wow, I came through that. We're always moving forward because the next
It's
thing is
true.
literally coming all the time. And it's only when you sit with somebody else and have that conversation, you're like, okay, wow, I've been through a lot. Okay, and I survived, yay.
And it's interesting you saying this, because I was only having a conversation yesterday, actually. So I'm doing an alpha course with my children. And
Mhm.
it was interesting in mum saying it's funny that we can laugh about it now because it wasn't funny at the time.
No.
You would never thought you can laugh about these moments. And I'm so glad that you added to it, because motherhood is different for everybody. It's different per child you have. Every child is a new horizon, new relationship. They draw out parts of you in terms of blessings, but also challenges. You
Mhm.
sometimes think, well, I haven't got no more tears in these ducklets, I don't think I could cry anymore. But what I love about what you said is, through all the challenges and the tests, the resilience of the family.
Mhm.
It's not about, how perfect everything is. It's how do we show up together as a united front when these challenges show up. Sometimes I get these questions of when we're out and about as a family, and people say, like, do your children argue? Do they disobey you? And I'm like, yeah, they're kids. We still go through the natural course of
You
life.
know?
I am not a perfect mother, absolutely not. I've had to apologize to my kids a million times over, like, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Help me out, teach me. So, everyone's journey is different. And, I can't imagine what it must have felt like to go through what you've gone through. But I do love the fact that you're on the other side and you can speak about it so gracefully, and more importantly, take the lesson that's learned. So thank you very much for sharing that.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's also helped me in my job as well, because now this is what I do. I literally work with parents, and I think there's a level of empathy because I've been through it. So I understand what you're going through. And I was always that person that sort of people watched, and sort of I'm the person that comes in the room and finds the person that's really struggling in the room. It's just that
It's the
level of
main
empathy.
part
Sometimes
of you.
it's problematic. It's sort of, I can't, if I'm around in a space and somebody is not positive in that space, I will find them just.
But
Um,
we had a conversation about that before, like the
uh,
beautiful setup that you have back home, and everyone kind of takes their ranking, and you're the
yeah,
you're the nurturer. You wouldn't feel happy just seeing someone kind of hidden away in the corner. You bring them in, invite them in, make them feel connected, and that's just your natural nurturing nature.
but it's interesting you say that though, because I think circumstances that you feel are quite overwhelming, then your natural traits show up. Because if I wasn't a nurturing person, I think I would have struggled far more. But if
Mm,
your default is to be nurturing, to be supportive, to be encouraging, and then you go into a motherhood situation with a group of young adults who, just for self preservation, are kind of like not distant, but a sort of, yes, I want to get to know you, but I want to do it at my pace. And it may show up and look like, I don't like you, I don't want to be close to you, and all those things. But I'm trying to figure out if it's worth investing in you because I don't know how long you're going to stay. And I've
so
had the pain of losing somebody significant to me. Therefore, I'm going to tread very carefully in establishing a relationship with you. If you don't know what that looks like, it looks like rejection. It feels like um, unkindness in a way. It feels like disrespect. It feels like I can't trust you. And that, and because of my trait and because of my work with having a lot of kids that have been rejected, that struggle to be in foster care, struggle to be their families, been rejected, come through trauma, where to trust somebody is a big deal because it costs you a lot. Having been through that, and then to see it, even though it's a different feeling because it's more personal, you can recognize that. And so it's kind of like, that it's not really about you, but at the same time, it still hurts. It's like when you're a new kid in a school and everybody's made friends already, and you come into the school and you don't have a friend, and you're desperate for somebody to come and say to you, "Oh, I'll be your friend. Come sit next to me." Where there's cliques established and you don't fit anywhere, and nobody's being unkind. They're just not willing to sacrifice being a friend to you because they don't know you. And so it's all those things. And so I think God puts us in situations that we have the tools for, we just haven't discovered them yet. And so when your back is up against the wall, then you go, okay, what do I have in my arsenal? And then things show up.
There's so many beautiful things that you've shared. One of the things I really love is how your life prepared you for a time like that to enter into a family, whereas you could have taken it personally and you realize because of the beautiful children you served before, you realize that you weren't the main character in the script. You realize
Mhm,
they were just protecting themselves. I love the fact that you use self-preservation, whereas someone else stepping into that space may feel like, well, they're being disrespectful, they're rejecting me, they're just making it difficult. But you saw it was nothing but love and love for themselves before they were able to open up their hearts again. And it's so true. The way we perceive things changes the
mhm.
way we actually receive and respond to that thing that's showing up. But that's what family is. Family isn't
Yeah.
we're gonna have fun every day and it's gonna be brilliant. It's like regardless, I'm gonna love you through the pain. I think motherhood teaches you that. And I don't know where I saw that, but I remember reading that quote is that motherhood is learning to love someone through that pain. They will say harsh things, they will do harsh things. They're feeling out life, they're discovering themselves, and especially teenage, young adulthood. That's
Mhm.
such a difficult time. Like, who am I? Where am I going? Where do I belong? So you've got all this internal confusion while having to refit into the family because you're not who you used to be. You're a new self, and you're trying to integrate this new self into the family dynamics. But family is all of it. It's every aspect. But we had a wonderful conversation about that. It is all things at both ends of the Richter scale and everything in between. It really is.
Absolutely.
So the
Absolutely.
next thing I want to ask you is, what's one part of your story that you feel has gone unheard or unacknowledged?
Mm. Oh, that's one part. Interestingly, I feel like that's such an open question with me because I don't normally have these kind of conversations. I think we spoke previously, and I said to you, I don't think I've ever had this conversation with anybody. And it's really interesting because the work I do, I have these conversations with parents all the time, and people go, nobody's ever asked me that before. And so it's one of those where I probably should have an answer, but I don't because I don't normally have this conversation. I think motherhood is one of those things where it's very rare to have a breather and sit down and discuss these things because it's evolving all the time and things are happening all the time. And because you're always preparing for the next thing, you don't stop and breathe and, appreciate where you're at or where you've been and things like that. But I feel like for me, that's a really good question, but I'd have to go away and think about it because I really don't know. Because I'm sure there are bits and pieces and there are things that I don't think I've even trying to think. Does anything spring to mind?
Well, pressuring yourself. I love the fact that you said, actually, maybe I don't have an answer and I might just
Oh,
go away and process it. Sometimes
yeah.
the gift in these questions isn't necessarily in how we respond to them. It's given us some, a new neurological connection. It's something else. There's a synapsis that's going to fire off and go, actually, I've never really thought about that. So there's parts of us that's just, in the subconscious, it's just there. It's just there idle
But
and
it's a great question, and yeah, I'll definitely have to go away and think about it.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Did you want to share maybe something that you've seen at work, or do you want to move on to the next question? It's entirely up to you.
Um, I think for me, because I'm from an African family, and within African families, it's education, education, education. You have to do well because we have to level the playing field, and education is where we can do that. And I
Mm,
think for me, when I was doing the work that I did, I kind of because I initially did A levels in physics and stuff, so I went to uni to learn radiotherapy. Funny enough, at a military college, and then I kind of like realized because part of that was working in a cancer department, working with the because I did therapeutic radiography, so working with cancer patients and things like that. And then I wanted to combine that with working with kids. And then I went and did the bit working with kids, and it upset me so much that little kids could die and things like that, that I said, no, I can't do that anymore. And I just want to work with kids. I don't want to do kids getting sick and things like that, but I wanted to care for kids. And funny enough, my dad then got very, very sick. So I dropped out to come home to support my mum, and then just never went back to that. I said I would because I had 1 year left and never went back to it. So then I did the thing with at a local residential school and started doing that. And sort of like going through the process, learning, doing, because you do practical stuff and it works for you and you don't know how it works. And then you go to a place and they do all the theoretical understanding. You're like, okay, that's why that works. Okay, brilliant. And then I met a little boy there that kind of changed the way that I worked, because he came and one day he just had a total meltdown and just the whole room was a mess. And people that know me know that I like neatness and stuff. So that was really messing with me. And previously I would have stopped him, like physically stopped him, like, no, it's enough, because what you're doing is going to either end up with you getting hurt or you hurting somebody. And something inside said, no, let him do what he needs to do. And so when he'd completely lost it, I think he was supposed to have a meeting with I think it was his mum, and she didn't show up, and this had happened quite often, or somebody significant to him anyway, and she hadn't showed up, and he'd lost it, and he'd like trashed the whole room with toys and everything. And something has just said, no, just let him and just sit with him. And we sat in the room. The room was an absolute tip, and we just sat there. And he looked at me and I looked at him, kind of like, okay, so what do we do now? And usually that would have been, okay, you need to now go and be somewhere, either in your room or somewhere, and be safe and things like that. And then I'll tell you up and stuff like that. And I just sat there. And it wasn't that I didn't want to move, but it almost felt like, if you move, you lose this moment. Whatever it is, you need to make sense of it. And so what then happened was he got up and started tidying. So then I got up and started tidying, and we were there for half an hour before either one of us said anything. And other colleagues came to check and said, no, no, we're fine, and we did that. And then it came to, because it was quite late, it came to bedtime, and he said, can you settle me? And my thinking was, oh, he's very upset with me, because actually I'd let him fall apart and I hadn't protected him, because usually I would have intervened. And I felt something, but I didn't know what it was. So anyway, did the settling, he went to bed. The next day, when he got up in the morning, he was like a Klingon the whole day. And it felt like we'd been through something together. Neither of us knew what it was, but whatever it was, we'd survived, and trust had been established. And so now it was like we sort of like go places and he'd be right there. And it was just like, it was a bit unnerving at first, but it was kind of nice. And it felt like, and I think that's when I learned and understood that there is social capital that you build, and it's a trust thing. And you don't always have to figure out what it is, but you have to be consistently there, and you have to have enough belief in yourself that even if you mess up, it's okay, because something was meant to come of that. And it was interesting because yesterday I was watching a thing, and it was about volcanoes of all things. And it was like how islands are created from volcanoes and stuff. And I was thinking, yeah, that's the chaos that creates something new. And actually having the room be neat and tidy and having everything be nice and smooth really isn't productive. Sometimes you need to get out of your comfort zone and experience something and go, okay, I survived. What was that? Because you, as a parental figure, are learning things about yourself all the time, because I think kids just come to shake things up a bit and say, right, do you really know what you think you know? And if you know what you know and that you're sure of, can you teach that to me in a way that I will understand? And so for me, I think I got more out of that process than he did, because he just, I think, felt that there was somebody safe that could see the worst of him and still stick around. I understood that perfect isn't a function of being a good carer or parental figure. Actually, chaos is that, because from that comes an understanding, a new self belief, a feeling that you've moved somewhere, you've moved something, something has triggered an evolution in your emotion and in your thinking. So that was really big for me.
Wow. You know, thank you for sharing that story. And it's interesting how you came across the volcanoes and saying that when the eruption comes, the new land is formed. And it's true, you know, when you have those outburst moments, you look around and say, oh, we're still safe, we're still together. Let's move forward with our new version of what this is for us. But good on you for listening to intuition, for being present, because like you said, you could have been like, oh my god, you know, don't do this and don't do that. And the young man went through so much, you know, I can't imagine how he must be feeling at the time. But the next thing I wanted to ask you was, how has motherhood challenged your self of identity?
Well, that's a good one, because it's evolving all the time. Because my young adults, they they're significant people in their own right and do things independently. So my sense of who I am to them as a collective is, we're at the stage now where it's advice giving,
Mm.
because the foundational stuff has been done. But equally, there are some emotional bits that I get to still kind of do a bit of work and stuff on. Um, but also, I learn a lot from them, because they're very self assured in some areas and they're still figuring out in other areas. And it's sort of like giving me advice, but also being aware that they might not always take the advice, but they know that the support is there. So even if you didn't take the advice and didn't go the way you want, it's not a judgment, because actually, my job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to make you feel confident enough and to have enough tools in the toolbox that when you go out, even if I'm not there, you can use the critical thinking to figure it out. And if you need my help, yes, you can come and ask. I'm here. But actually, I kind of respect the fact that you want to do it for yourself.
Wow.
And so we're at that stage. But I suspect that things will happen as they mature and as they get older, where there'll be a different sort of support, a different sort of help. And I also don't have the I haven't known, well, I've known them since birth, but I haven't been part of their lives since birth. So it's still, there's some things that are still fresh that you have to establish, and some things where you just click. And they're all individuals as well. So it's a different kind of parenting for each. Some are very good at coming and asking for advice when they need it, but can be very distant when they don't need it. Um, some are very much, if you ask me, I'll tell you, but if you don't ask me, then I'm okay with that. And some are very much, I need to speak to you every week because I need to sort of like offload some stuff and get some advice. And others are like, well, we're all in this world together, and yeah, I see you every day, but I don't necessarily have conversations with you, and we can do either a 5 minute conversation or talk for 2 hours. Depends what day and what kind of mood I'm in when you get me. But I think for me, the significant part has been their relationship with their dad has kind of grown a lot. And that makes me very happy, because I think that because I come from an objective point of view, I think sometimes emotional baggage can get in the way of doing the difficult work. And because I don't have that, I've almost made it impossible not to do that work, because I can be very objective and go, oh, but that, and but that. And they're like, oh, that's a difficult conversation. We don't want to go there. And so we've gradually gone there. And sometimes I haven't been the most favorite person because I've chosen to go there. But I think the relationships that we have now are far stronger and more established because we're doing the work still. But we had to start. And I don't think everybody was keen to start.
It's interesting. You really unpacked a lot in your response. And it's interesting, like when we're a mother, that mothering journey, excuse me, isn't stagnant. It's very dynamic and it's forever changing. And I love the way you highlighted the different phase of parenting. Obviously, when they're little, you know, you're instilling foundational skills, life skills, and guidelines, and they pretty much do whatever you say, right? You know, you say we're going out and we're all going out together, right? But as they get older, you realize, I like the way you articulated that, it's very much a guidance, and
Mm-hmm.
it's them to choose whether they want to take that on. And it's not prodding, it's learning each character and realizing some don't like pouring out, some will only pour when you ask, some are perfect to be left alone. And you know, you've got all your different characters, and I think it's just navigating that space and realizing you don't have to force one to be like the other, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody is different and needs different levels of support at different stages in their life. So thank you so much for sharing it. I love the way your face lit up when you said that their relationship with their father is just like really increased in a positive way. It's so lovely.
Yeah.
It really is beautiful. The next thing I want to ask you is, can you describe a time when you felt completely unseen or unsupported as a mom?
I think when I initially, I think there's been two bits actually in my life. When I initially came into the family and the kids were like, oh, we're grown, we don't need another parent. It's like, come on, I don't. And sort of my husband then getting very frustrated with the situation. Like, these kids are being very ungrateful. And I having to say to him, it's not that. It's kind of like, but if you and I have had the same mother and father our whole lives,
True.
so it's very different and it's very difficult to understand when you have significant relationships that have been broken for whatever reason or severed in some way, that affects the sense of who you are, because it's that thing of, why do some people get that and then I get this chaos, confusion, and all these things that happen. And so they're not kind of doing it purposely. Part of that is trying to protect you as their dad. Part of that is not wanting to form another attachment that they could lose, and the pain that they would have to go through again, and trying to avoid that. But the other part is that actually they want to hold on to that relationship with you as their father, because you are their consistent person. And sometimes I would say something or do something, and they bypass what I have to say, and it would frustrate him. And I would say, actually, they're doing that because it's their kind of way of saying, I want to have a better relationship with you. Because it almost feels like somebody else has come in and is now taking you away from us. That's the, you know, and he didn't see it that way. He's like, but they're my kids. The relationship I have with them is different. And I was like, but that's a conversation that needs to be had, because
Yes.
otherwise it feels like somebody's robbing you of something. And if that relationship isn't significant, where they feel they can come to you for everything, now it feels that you're more distant from them.
Very
So
true.
for a long time, I had to sit in that space of the, I'm not going to verbalize it, but you're not my parent. I have
Mm,
a parent, and you being there as well costs me time and space with my parent.
true.
So something, you're not someone positive in my life. You're actually taking away from me.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
you don't know yourself and know your worth, that can really hurt and damage you. And I don't think people give parents credit for that, because you have to sit in a space where you're an adult. So you can't be arguing and sort of like saying, "What about me? What about me?" Because you are now the parental figure. You don't get that. And
Mm,
people are like, "Well, if you don't like it, there's no reason for you to stay in a relationship. You can always leave." So there's not that grace, but kids will get that grace because, and rightly so,
mm,
because actually they have no control over that relationship, and you're asking them, you're practically forcing somebody on them in a
mm.
way.
Do you
So
know what's
there's that
wonderful
bit.
for me is
Yeah,
that you are
sorry, go on.
emotionally in the scenario, but you're so self-aware and spatially aware of what's going on around you. It's quite, it wouldn't be frowned upon for you to take some of that more personally or to be upset. But the fact that you're able to really ground yourself and realize, like, just putting yourself in that young person's shoe and saying, actually, I'm not a happy arrival, I'm a threat. They don't know what
Hmm.
this is. It's changing their atmosphere. They're kind of concerned of where this is going. I think the way you dealt with it is really admirable.
But I think it's easy to talk about it now, but actually being in it wasn't that smooth and wasn't that straightforward. It's very difficult because sometimes the behavior felt very disrespectful, and it was very important to deal with the disrespect, but always maintain the relationship.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, this behavior I don't like. You I love, but this behavior I don't like. So let's not do that. You can have a voice, but present your thoughts and ideas in a respectful way. That one I've got all day and all time for. And also when they were being very talkative, having lots and lots and lots of conversations around things, things that on the surface don't look like they have anything to do what you're talking about, but what you're really doing is building social capital. You're building a friendship, because you don't have that beautiful thing that parents have, that have carried you in the womb and raised you from when you were a baby and cuddled you when you were teething and all those kind of things. You don't have that. So now you're trying to establish a relationship with a young adult that is also trying to figure out who they are and where they fit, and is now having a voice and a sense of identity, and is going through hormones and all those kind of things, and you're trying to battle all that and be the adult in the situation. Meanwhile, your emotions are being hurt, you feel disrespected, you're doing a job that you're not being paid for, and the person you're doing it for is unappreciative. And so it's causing a lot of tension. And if you don't have a strong relationship with your partner, that can break relationships, because
Yeah.
you need a support system. Somebody that you can go, okay, we're in this together, but today I feel this. Okay, I'm going to support you. And sometimes I'd have to say to him, because he'd get very annoyed and like, no, we have to. And I'm like, no, calm down, because I get that you want to protect me, but at the same time, they are your responsibility too. And they need to feel that the love for them is there before they feel the judgment of what you're about to say that they're doing wrong. And it's okay for them to dislike me at this stage, but it's important that they maintain a relationship with you. So you cannot be taking sides at this point. You need to maintain that relationship with them so they feel nurtured and safe. Once they feel safe, we can do the other work, but they have to feel safe first. But at the same time, anytime there's disrespect, we have to deal with that disrespect. We have to do those things in tandem. Otherwise, you give license for rudeness, and that is not tolerated. But at the same time, you still have to separate the behavior from the person. It's not the same. And sometimes we don't do that. We get caught in our own emotions and go, and I've done it. I'll be very honest with you. There are times when I was like, oh no, we went to a place and, it was Jesus take the wheel, let me breathe, because
True.
otherwise, there'll be no distinction between you as a child and me as the adult. And we need to maintain that because there's respect. But the other time was when I was going through IVF and I had a full-time job. And I was like, there were times when, you'd have to make that, you're waiting for the call to say, oh, yes, it's it's sort of like you're pregnant and things like that, and then it wouldn't work out, and then you'd still go to work. And I didn't want that thing of telling people, because then people will always come and say to you, "How's it going?" and things like that, and get excited for you in a nice way. But it was a lot of pressure. And so you'd have to carry on like as if nothing had happened. And that was quite like, and then I saw this documentary, I think it was a Mylene Class documentary, and I think it was about miscarriages. And they said that even when you have a miscarriage, there's remnants of the child that stay with you.
What are pregnancies exactly, even if it's a miscarriage?
Yeah. And I was like, so when I was getting emotional and crying, I couldn't figure out what that was. It's kind of like, well, I didn't know this person. I didn't. And then I began to where people ask me, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then go somewhere and cry and then get back to work. And but I needed to be at work because to be at home and to sit and think about it was too difficult. And then I was working with kids who's had been put into care, so either it wasn't safe for them to be with their parents or their parents didn't want them in the house and things like that. And so that really tested my faith. So I was doing a whole load of, this doesn't make sense. I need somebody to make it make sense for me, because it feels really unfair as well. And so that was really tough for me as well, because I felt like, because I think I lost the child at 11 weeks as well. So it's that thing of, oh, I'm going to be a parent. I'm so excited and stuff. And you start buying things and stuff, and then it doesn't happen. And then it's that thing of, okay, so I was temporarily, but I'm now not. What do I do with that? And then it's sort of, so yeah, those were the two, I think, significant times in my life when I felt that.
Thank you for sharing both. I think you shared like very sensitive aspects, but in such a graceful way that myself and the listeners can take so much from. Really, just thank you. Thank you so much for the way you shared that. And it's nice because there are different listeners and everyone is having their own version of their own motherhood journey. So it's nice to have those varied experiences. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
The next
Thank
thing,
you for asking such good questions.
after this, you're handling very well. I must say that. The next question I have for you is, what has been the most rewarding aspect of motherhood?
Oh, that's ongoing. That's like, if you ask me any day, there's something different, there's something new, there's something. Because one of my daughters is now traveling around um, Ghana, homeland, and stuff like that. And she's actually doing the trips. So, so many people go to Accra and they say, "I've been to Ghana." It's like coming to London and saying, "I've been to the UK." And actually, you know, she's on her own journey, and I really respect her for that. And he's doing that. And it's kind of like, okay, when I come back, then I have to really be an adult and think about buying a property and, settling down, having kids. But right now, I've got to go on this journey for myself, and I love that.
That's
And so they, we're about to go to graduation for one of my sons in July, and he's off to Brazil now again. Having a nice time there. So I love the fact that they're able to live their lives, knowing and understanding at some point they have to take responsibility for their lives. Um, I love that we sometimes have games nights where they come, we play games, we laugh, we chat and things like that, but everybody can go off and do their own life. And it's quite nice knowing that there's somewhere they can come back to. Um, I love the fact that even with my nieces and nephews, just have that kind of, yeah, we have conversations and laugh and things like that. And I think it's just nice knowing that there's people that are in your life that you love more than life itself. But it's also nice to let them go and do what they need to do in life to make themselves happy. And I think that for me, whenever they achieve something, I feel so proud of them. And like they kind of like, yeah, they did it on their own, yeah. And it's that thing where you kind of like feel, oh, there was a part of me in that. And sometimes it's really silly things like our youngest daughter, she bought a car and it was the same color and the same make as the one that we have. And then when our son decided that, because he's always very much, I want to do everything on my own, I'm going to research everything. And then we said, oh, you should go to our dentist. And he usually will argue about things. No, we have to do this and this. And then he went and he was like, oh, yeah, it was a very good dentist and this, that. It's kind of like things where we've given advice and they've taken the advice and you sort of like slowly sort of smack to yourself and go, yeah, but I'm winning. And then they'll go do something that you gave them advice for, do something completely different. You know, my daughter sent me a message saying, oh, I've started investing now. I'm my first bit. And it was like, yeah. And so it's little things that probably mean nothing to anybody else, but it's kind of nice for us that everybody feels heard and that everybody knows they can come and get advice, but actually equally we value and respect them enough that we like the fact that they can do things on their own. So yeah.
It's incredible, and congratulations for the upcoming graduation. That's amazing. And I read somewhere that a woman should do solo travel at least once in her life. So the fact that your daughter's doing that before she starts her life, the journey of buying a house, entering into motherhood, marriage, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So the next question I have for you is, what advice would you give to your younger self about before becoming a mother?
That solo travel one, literally, I like that one. I
That's a
think,
great one, actually. Yeah.
yeah, I think trust that everything that you need and want will come to you.
Mm.
Um, don't feel like you have to fast forward anything or everything. Um, and be willing to say no, even to people you love and care about. Be willing to say no, um, because you're living your life, not theirs. And seek out experiences for yourself, and be okay if it's not the same as everybody else, because you're not the same as anybody else. You're amazingly you. You're a one-off, and to go off the beaten track if you have to is okay. Yeah, that's the advice I'd give to myself.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And I love that aspect of it's okay to say no, especially for women, both men and women, it's important. But
Hmm.
I think sometimes we become accustomed that when we're asked the question, the answer is inevitably yes. Not a
Hmm.
question if the only response is yes. And just like that person, they can't always just expect the yes. They have to realize that no is also an option. So, like you're saying, even if it's someone that you love, make a choice wisely. So,
I think it's also like we spoke about before. I think there's something in the order in which you're born as well. The
mm,
level of responsibility, whether you're male or female, and the level of responsibility that is placed on you, particularly by your family. And if you lose a parent early in life, um, whether it be through divorce or through their passing or stuff like that, what role you assume in life, because that role you learn to master very quickly, unfortunately, then sort of causes a domino effect in the rest of your life. And then you learn to be very independent and very self-reliant, but then that then doesn't allow other people to help and support you. So then it becomes harder and harder for you to ask for help, especially if you don't believe that the help will come or
I'm
you feel
glad
you're going to be a burden.
I'm glad you spoke into that. I think that's also very relevant for this conversation. When you're so hyper independent because no one else has really had you, you've been the one holding the family together, be it your parents or your siblings, and
Hmm.
the kind of, like you said, the birthing, what kind of birth ranking you've been born into, that also has an impact. If you're the eldest child, we all know what that's like. You become the second parent, like you either become the second father or the second mother,
Hmm.
and it's just like, how does that dynamics play out? And sometimes I was always mindful about this. This is what's coming to mind with what you shared. Is when I was raising my children, I guess quite traditionally, you raise the eldest to be there when you're not. And I remember that I was so petrified about doing that because I was scared of Lachey becoming their mother figure and them losing that spirit, that sibling dynamics. And she was always very good at reinforcing what I was putting in place.
Mm-hmm.
But there was times that I said, actually, I already know that you have my back, but I'm just mindful of what that dynamics is, because there's a thin line between older sibling and not sibling.
Mm-hmm.
I was just always very mindful of, actually, I want them to maintain that sacred essence that they are still siblings. I used to do this thing where if one was in trouble, I would kind of get them to beg for the other one. And if they did that for each other, I'd kind of reward them a bit lighter on the discipline, because I was always very mindful of that dynamics of, it's quite easy to tarnish a relationship. Hopefully it makes sense where I'm going, in that dynamics of, yes, you might be helping with your siblings, yes, you may be looking after them, but you still have to maintain that sibling dynamics, not adult and sibling, because otherwise you get pushed out a little bit. And I'm just very mindful of that.
But it's so good that you pick up on that, because a lot of parents don't. And it's that thing of sometimes you have to almost flip it so
Mm.
that the oldest one becomes the one with the least responsibility.
Oh,
And
that's a
you have
good
to
one.
put that in there.
That's
Yeah, because it's kind of like, go away on a trip with your friends or do something.
yeah, you have to kind of like push them out to do it. It's so
Yes.
true.
So
So
that they can go away and know that everything's not going to fall apart, so that when they come, the dynamic may have changed slightly, but actually it's a weight off their shoulders. And also there's a sense of responsibility that the others get, that actually, oh wow, my older sibling was really doing this, and this, and I didn't realize, okay, I owe them a bit more respect, but also, actually, I can do this bit, so I can take this off them, and then they can do that bit. And so there's more of a closeness and more of a regard and respect for each other. And it's almost like anybody can play any position, and it's quite nice. So that even if somebody's not there, we've got you. We've got your
taking
back. So
care.
you can go and
Exactly.
do life and come back, and you still have a place.
You hit the nail on the head when you talked about the older sibling always has that at the back of their mind. If I go, will you all be okay? Because they're so used to holding it together. But it's very important to just say, actually, everyone will be fine. You need to go and do what you're doing. You come back, and then there'll be a slightly different dynamics. And it's the fact that you can now realize you can go away and come back. You can now realize someone else can take care of that. So I love that. It really is nice.
And I think the parent needs to do that, because it's kind of like you almost need to, like you say, push them out and go,
Mm.
even if it isn't fine, it's not your job to make it fine. That's my job
Yes,
as your
and
parent.
it's also funny enough. One thing I will say, you've brought up, you reminded me of something. Is that is also how you speak it into being, depending on what child you're speaking to. So I
Yeah.
do remember that conversation taking place, and I meant it from a place of love. And sometimes we have the purest intentions, but
Mhm.
I remember my daughter saying to me, when you said that, it actually hurt me. It made me feel like you wanted me to go, and I love
Mhm.
being with my family. And I was like, oh, it's interesting that I might have had the purest intentions. So I think more than anything, it's like kind of questioning and knowing that child as well as possible to know how to deliver it, because it can seem as, they're holding everything, and then it's like you're asking them to go, but it's not so much that they don't want to let go of things, it's that they actually enjoy that family dynamics, like
Yeah.
do things in clusters. And I was quite shocked, because I'm there thinking, oh, I'm doing the right thing. And bless her, I was so proud of her for not leaving me to assume. It was really nice to say, actually, I felt pushed out when you did it that way. And I think sometimes we just need to have those conversations, but more importantly, we need to listen. But, I only got these answers from my kids because I begged them. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, help me.
But that's beautiful in a way, because it's really nice when they can be honest with you and say, I understood what the intention was, but this is how I felt. And
Yes.
so then, and I think it's always really important to have those one-to-one conversations
Mm.
with your kids, because how one perceives something may not be the same as how it's intended.
So,
And the more you talk to them, the more you you kind of know where to tweak things for each one. And it's
Absolutely.
interesting because whenever you have a conversation with all of them, you start to see the more relaxed they get, the more their individual characters come
Yeah.
out. But it's kind of like, and they find you can see the confidence growing where they can do that. But it's a process because oftentimes you speak to them individually and they're very vocal. They come into the big group thing, and then sometimes they kind of shy away. So
It's
you
the
know that
sibling
they're doing really
dynamics.
well.
It is the
Yeah,
sibling dynamics. They've got this like
exactly.
unspoken communication.
Yeah,
They know not. I don't know. I don't. It's not that they know not to do so, but they just function a certain way. People often say like siblings have their own language, and they
mhm,
have this their own in hierarchical. And
mhm,
so I think it's so important that you have the one-to-one conversations, because not
definitely.
all, but some just won't show up because they're in that kind of dynamics. They're like, I'm not saying anything because XYZ is going to say something, or
Yeah,
I might. And again, sometimes it's love. Sometimes they actually stay quiet about how they really feel because they actually love their siblings so much. They're
yeah,
always conscious of how is this going to land? How is this going to land? But when you're in that one-to-one space, they can obviously share with you, and then you can walk them through that. But that's actually beautiful what you've shared there.
yeah. I think, and also like as they get older, it's it always feels like it becomes more significant because, and I think mums hold that space. Mums in particular, to take nothing away from dads, mums hold that space where emotionally they get each of their kids. So we have a family WhatsApp group, and then I have one individually with each of them.
Ah,
And I know there's certain things that I can put in the family group and it's fine. But there are other things that um I'm kind of hesitant. I will probably put it in their individual and then say, "How do you feel about this? Are you okay with me putting it in there?" Whereas their dad is very much everything goes in the group thing, and I'm like, and then I'll get a message from one of them
because
like,
I've done that. I've literally done that. And it would be like one of my sons will like messaging me, and I'm like, do it in the family group. And it's like, no, mum, I just want to do it. I won't get in the picture. Oh, that is so funny. It's so true. Oh, that is funny. Yeah, good old WhatsApp. Oh, that is brilliant. But what I love ultimately is the fluidity of being open to dipping in and out, not having
Mhm,
rules, just kind
mhm,
of listening, learning, feeling, gauging, being open, and being able to learn. As much as we're teaching them and guiding them, being able to learn them. I always say to my kids that I can become the best version of myself in our dynamics when you teach me, because I don't
mhm.
uh, assume to understand everything. It's a learning curve as they go through different phases. But yeah, that's a really nice piece you've spoken into. You've given me so many memories and making me laugh, can't hold it in. Um, the next thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you balance the emotional weight of being a mother alongside pursuing your own personal dreams and aspirations?
I think on that one, I think I'm at a place now where it's not so difficult. But I think initially, when I was going through all the other stuff and trying to build that relationship with each of them independently and collectively as a family, I had to make a decision of what was more important. And I had to do that because within the family, because we were forming a family, the most important thing was stability and consistency. So I couldn't have anything else come and rock that at all. So I think at that point, I needed everything else to be on the back burner, slowly sort of like happening. But my main focus was there. But at the same time, have it be so that it was so normal that they didn't feel the pressure of that happening. And so, but I think also I had always in the back of my mind, because of the kind of work I do, there were always things that were happening that made me almost sharpen those skills more. And then because the kids knew the work that I did, oftentimes there'd be stuff that they would do, but they wouldn't recognize that what they were doing was harmful in any way because they were just being them. And I knew that if I challenged it head on, it would become an issue. So then I'd say, oh, I'm working with this young person and this is what they're doing. And it was really funny because they'd objectively give an opinion that was contrary to their behavior. And I'll go, oh, but hang on a second. It's interesting you should say that because yesterday you did X, Y, and Z. And I was thinking that you would help me understand that kid because you did this. And they'll go, no, no, no. The reason I did this was because of this. And it felt like a learning thing. And I don't know if they understood what they were doing. They
Oh,
was
it's
just
so
defending their
funny.
position. But
Yeah.
for me, I was like, okay, but for me, working with that, because I need to understand how that
Mm,
mindset works so then I can reach that kid, not understanding that it was really helping them rather than that kid, because I already knew what I was doing with that kid. But it made our relationship go smoother because it was like, okay, I'm learning from you and that helps me there. And it was like what I was learning at home, I was taking to work, I was taking to work. I was like, so I
that's
had that.
amazing.
I had that. But at the same time, it was very draining because you it felt like you didn't have a break because I was very jealous of parents that did other jobs as a full-time thing. And then so whenever they went to work, they had a break from this kind of parenting thing.
Mm.
And then me, I was doing it in both spaces. And I was like, oh, this is hard. Like literally my prayer was, God, at some point, can you take some of this off? This is a lot. Not really understanding that it was sharpening me in both spaces. And so I became better in both spaces. But emotionally, it was very draining. And I don't think that, I think their dad got the brunt of it because sometimes when I was almost like a pressure cooker and then I would explode, then he would get it. And they'd be like, what did I do? I was like, you didn't do anything, but you're the only person that I can raw with and have that
Well,
be okay. But then I'd also have to go back and sort of apologize and fix that and go, okay, let's figure out what we can do to balance that. And so within our household, we kind of made this thing where every couple of weeks or so, we have to do something nice, just us two. Um, just because we just needed a break from being parents because it was
you
intensive.
do. Yeah, you
Yeah,
do.
it was
Definitely.
intensive. And so that for me was, yeah, it was very necessary.
That's it's interesting how it did sharpen you on both sides, but the reality is you were dealing with family dynamics at home and at work, so that is
Hmm.
really intense. And
Hmm.
it's nice that you started to insert what you needed with you and your partner, and you're so self-aware. I don't know if you're aware how self-aware you are, but the way you speak into very complex scenarios, that you're still able to draw out and look at yourself and realize what's going on and apologize and be present. That takes a lot. It takes a lot to be able to do that. So really commendable. Really is.
Thank you.
So the next thing I wanted to ask is, can you share a lesson that you've learned from your own mother or a mother figure that's shaped how you parent today?
I think my mum's amazing, first and foremost. Um, and very, very resilient, but she's also very African in the sense that there's no sugarcoating. Everything is very direct and very dramatic. Like my mum will see you after a while and say, I don't know if it's black mothers or African mothers. I can speak on my mother and my aunties are like that too. They'll see you after a while and they'll be like, hmm, you've put on weight. Like not even a hello or stuff like that. Oh, you put on weight. Like, and it's like, is that a compliment? Is that negative? What are we doing here? Like, you know, and you're like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, they're very plump, very voluptuous women. So it's kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing with that. Okay. So, so there's that. But I think one of the things that I learned from my mum is that you don't know how resilient you are until you have to be resilient. Because if my mum were to sit here and list all the things that she had to come through to raise us, I have to take my hat off to her and really appreciate her because you leave a foreign country, you come here, you have to establish, get a job, establish a relationship, have kids. You then, you know, my dad went to university, and she was raising us. And at one stage, she was working two jobs, taking my brother to the babysitter and things like that. So she was running around like a headless chicken. She'd come home, she'd be very tired and things like that. I never once heard my mum complain. She'd get frustrated and she'd go in her room and be very upset and things like that. But she was always, always there for us. Um, and so for me, resilience looks like I do everything I need to do in order to create the best of any given situation. And so I respect her for that. But there's also a flip side to that because I never saw my mum at any point ask anybody for help at all. And I think that it would have been nice for her to ask for help. But I think for her generation, the expectation was this is your responsibility, so you have to do right by it. And I think it cost her a lot emotionally. But what I will say is that what I've learned is that as a parent, you need to be honest with your kids and what you're going through because there comes a point in their lives where they start to see you as a human being and not their parent that knows and does everything. And you need them to do that because there are things about you that you may feel are okay. And we have a saying in Ghana, the man drawing the line in the road doesn't know it's crooked. It's the people coming up behind him that tell him that it's crooked. And so if you don't have those conversations, and it's up to you when you decide, but if you don't have those conversations with your kids, they don't get to tell you that maybe what you're teaching them doesn't resonate with them the way that they should, like the example you gave. But also, you don't give yourself grace and you're trying to be this perfect person, and it doesn't help them because then they have to be that. Whereas if you can have those conversations, they can then tell you, oh, I can help you with this, or I understand you better with that. And they can also tell you when you tell them things and it doesn't hit the way that you intended it to. Because I think there is a disconnect and a lack of respect for the generation before us. Because for some reason we felt that they were very strict and they didn't listen to our emotional needs and things like that. But from having conversations with them, they understood that a lot of them had come from somewhere else and they understood they were in a space that wasn't theirs. And what they wanted to do was create a space for their kids so they could get the best out of that. And part of that was making them very resilient so that if they went out and somebody called them something out of their name, they could withstand that. But what that meant was that they always felt less than, and you'd create that less than before they even left the house. And one of the things that really struck me about my dad was my dad gave all my siblings and myself Ghanaian names, and all my friends, cousins, family, and stuff that were African had Christian names. And when we were at school, that really irritated me because nobody could pronounce my name correctly. And I love him for that now because I think my dad was ahead of his time. But now I've got friends and cousins like, oh, I really want to use my African name. I want to rock my African name and things like that. And it's that thing of now we do a different kind of parenting where we say that you as yourself are good enough and you going out into the world, you have to know that we are here to support you, but we'll give you all the tools, we'll give you all the encouragement and let you know that A, you're a child of God, B, you come from greatness. You have ancestors that have been warriors so that you don't have to fight as hard, but you still have to fight. And so that sense of people came before you. And so you come from greatness. So when you go out there, when you walk in a room, you walk in a room as if you have a right to be there. when you go and sit at a table, if the menu is not satisfying you, you get to ask for something that's a la carte, and that's okay. You don't have to adapt your taste for what is on the menu. And if you feel that you ask for that and they say we don't have it, you're entitled to get up and go and sit in another restaurant. That's fine too. And so they did what they did for their generation, and we're doing what we're doing for the next generation. But we owe them that respect. So that is what both my mum and my dad taught me.
That's such a wholesome response. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking about these dynamics that people talk about how they were raised. And quite frankly, they were raising us in a time that's different to now. They
Mhm.
endured things that we can't even imagine. And they couldn't afford to allow their children to, how do I say, exist outside certain boundary conditions, because it wasn't a case of you getting a slap on the wrist. It was a case that you'll be forcibly put into prison, you'll be murdered, and a whole avalanche of things that could happen. So they had to be the way they were, coming into a new country, raising the children. And it's quite interesting because I know there's this a lot of conversations about it wasn't loving, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. But imagine being paralyzed by pressure, stress, raising a family, being in a new country, dealing with things that children are not aware of, because it was fine for the kids because they had the safety of the parents and the extended support. But the reality that they faced is something that we've never had to experience.
And it's really
Really.
interesting because we talk about mental health now and we talk about it like it's a new thing. But if we really go back and look at what they had to come through, you're in a different country, in a different environment, even the acclimatizing to the weather is a big thing, and all those kind of things. But what they did really well is they created things like Saturday schools, they created
Yes.
church.
Yeah.
There was church, and then there was like going to people's houses, and we had that sense of community. And I think the mental health aspect was always there, but because we created community, because we do community really well,
Yes.
it's that thing of even funerals became celebrations of life rather
Church.
than
Yeah. Very
loss and
true.
things like that. And so I think those are the things that we've lost where now mental health has become a major thing. Because you when you were little, you vexed that all your kids were playing at the weekend. You had to go to Saturday school to do extra maths and English. But when you turn up on Monday and they were doing the work and you were like zipping through it because
Exactly.
you
You got
like
superpowers.
exactly, and you were like, yeah, and then that sense of I know who I am, I'm great,
I
and it's
love
like
that.
you were doing comprehension and doing 2 stages ahead of everybody else because you did Saturday school, but every Saturday it came and you was like, oh, I have to go again and
But
stuff like that.
I love what you said though about you didn't like it then, but you
Mhm.
understand it now. Like even with
Yes,
your name, like your
yeah,
father intentionally, purposely said, "This is who you are. This is your identity. You will get comfortable with who you are now before the world tells you something else." So you
mhm.
grew up knowing and being anchored in with that heritage, whereas some of us we were very much trying to be westernized. It was really a defrag, a separation from who he was, and then you hit that point in your life where it's like, who am I? Like, I've lost my identity. Now who am I? Which one do I borrow? And we go into different crises. But you are so spot on, and that's why they always say, your parents did the best they could with what they had,
100%.
because
100%.
we don't know what they had to go through. And not being funny, I some of the stories I hear, the people that exist now, they couldn't cope with that level of trauma,
No.
turmoil. It wasn't easy, not like it
But
is
I
now.
think one of the things that we don't give them grace for is that a lot of those things they didn't tell us.
That's
So
very true.
and
Very
so because we didn't know, I hear a lot of people my age, I think like we maybe like 40 and above,
true.
sort of like say, yeah, my parents always shouted at me or they didn't emotionally they weren't there for me and stuff. And my question to them is who was there for them emotionally? And
Exactly.
where did they get to take their stuff?
Very
So
true.
you are now acclimatizing to a new country, new way of life. People can call you out of your name, and you've got nowhere to. Because if you look at all these laws about discrimination and stuff, they're not that old. It's not
No,
that long
exactly.
ago. And so they had all that. And then at the same time, they didn't want to share what they were going through with you because they didn't want to load you with that. So at no stage have you had that conversation. And so your reflection on your growing up was that my parents beat me at times, my parents shouted at me, my parents weren't there for me emotionally and stuff. But it's totally out of context. And I think some of us have to find the time to sit down with our parents and have those conversations. I think the best thing for me has been having that conversation with my mum because I found out so much things about my mum, and I had similar conversation with my grandma, and I found out so many things, and I was like, oh, so I didn't know this. Like I didn't know that I was a second born because my mum, I was a rainbow baby, and I really didn't know that I was a rainbow baby.
They won't tell you. They wouldn't have told you at the time.
They
Definitely not.
didn't, and I had to ask those questions. And always say to people, if you have the luxury of having a good enough relationship with your parents and they still happen to be alive, you're blessed and they're still alive,
True.
have those conversations because it will really change your perception of who they are because you start to see them as human beings. They're
Exactly.
not perfect
They're
and
not
they
your parents'
did the best they
superheroes.
could
Yeah.
and it was enough. And so what you also see is when you do that and they feel that grace, they become the most amazing grandparents.
Yeah.
And you're like, where were you when I was growing up? Because this is not the person that is
Oh,
now
that's
growing
funny.
up.
Yeah, it's so funny. Even when they're disciplined, you're like, not
Exactly.
yet. I wish I had that.
I
No,
don't know
you're
this
quite
person.
right. That's
This
beautiful.
person would have whooped me, but
Yeah.
now you're saying, oh, you have to what is it? What did she say about oh, it's growing pains and you have to allow
Yeah.
him and give him grace. Eh? Who are you? This is not the person that birthed me. The person that birthed me would be talking about you need to whip this child into shape. I don't know who you are. It's just
It's funny dynamics when you've got children. That's so funny. You're like, where's my mum?
I don't know this person. This is not the real you. Who are you?
Oh, that
So,
was so funny. But no, I'm really glad you spoke into that. I really am. So thank you for that. Next thing I need to ask you is, how do you define success as a mother?
ooh, one of those hard ones you have to reflect on.
Mm.
Success for me is really a reflection of the happiness of my kids and how much time, this is really funny because I always say this to them, how much time they want to spend with me when they don't have to.
Oh,
That
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
But
that's a big one, especially when they're older. It's very
yes,
true. Teenage and young adults, they don't have to. You're quite right. They don't
yeah,
have to, but they choose to.
yes. If they choose to, and if they're happy, I'm happy. So that's success for me when you don't have to be around me and you choose to, you know, I wanted to come and see you and spend time with you. That's better than any birthday present
Yeah.
or Christmas present. This is like, okay, I did something right. I didn't mess up. Okay, good. So yeah.
Actually, really nice, actually. That's beautiful. And it's funny, yeah, that's really interesting because my oldest 20 and 24. So it's quite interesting saying that, like, do you want to go out for a meal, mum? Do you want to do this? And it's like, you look at me like, yes, please. Like you cherish that because they don't have to.
Yeah.
They really don't have to. And they don't,
Yeah.
but they choose to. So that's beautiful. I really like that. And your face is just gleaming.
I agree.
I love it. That is actually so beautiful the way you said that. They don't have to. Like it isn't an obligation. There's no guilt trip. They just choose to, and they actually
Or
enjoy.
they go somewhere and they come back and they said, "Oh, I saw this and I thought you'd like it."
Yeah,
And
I
I
love
looked at their
that.
food, it's like, "Oh,
Or when
thanks."
they like even like come back with like chocolate, like your favorite chocolate, you think actually you actually stopped on the way to get something.
Yeah.
Like, it's so amazing. Like and just the gifts, like they pick better for me than I pick for myself. To be honest,
Hmm.
they're out
Hmm.
and about. They might come home with a gift, and what you're saying is so true. Like you don't have to do that, but you choose to. It's beautiful.
Hmm. It's
Really,
really nice.
I
Or
love.
you just get a phone call. Oh, hi. I was just checking in, seeing how you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm out of sort of like away from you, but you're still thinking about me. Oh, that's nice. And then kind of like learning to reciprocate and not being disappointed when it goes to voicemail, when you're just like, and then they call back and they go, oh, you know, sorry I missed your call. You get a text message or like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's really noisy, so I can't answer. But okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. If you could rewrite any part of your motherhood journey, what would it be and why?
This sounds really corny, but there's no rewrite because I like this place where I'm at the moment. And at any point, it could have changed and taken a detour, and I wouldn't be here. Um, but if I knew then what I had to go through to get here, it may be a different story because there were times when it just felt like, oh, I'm drowning here. And it was like, even with all my experience of doing this job, it's different when it's your own. Um, and it will test every aspect of who you are, especially when you go out to bat for somebody emotionally. And like you say, the response is almost like a rejection. And you keep showing up every day and you keep doing it and you keep showing up. And it, for a long time, it doesn't get any easier. And you just keep showing up and keep showing up and keep showing up. And then it starts to get easier. But it's not an immediate easier. It's like, oh, I've put in all this work and still. And then you know that one small thing can derail the whole thing, and then you have to start again. And then you're like, why do I have to do this? And then something happens, and you're okay, that's why I do this. Okay. And it always comes at the time when you feel like, I'm done. I don't
Yeah,
have anything
it's
else.
true.
And then it shows up, and you're like, oh, where did all this extra energy come from? Okay, I'm in it again. I'm reinvested. And it's not big things, it's really little things that you wouldn't, that are not significant to anybody else, you know. And so, yeah, for me, there's nothing I would change. And that's big for me right now because along the journey, I've gone from being sad, mad, angry, um, frustrated, all of those things. Um, and I think at some part during my adulting process, I did the comparing until I got to the point where I understood that there's only one of you and nobody else in life has these experiences. And so your competition is with yourself. It's not with anybody else because that wouldn't even make sense. Like apples and oranges are not the same. And so once you understood that, and once you look back and go, wow, I came through all that and I'm still here, you know what? Yeah, I'm
Pure
good.
love. That is pure love. And I love the way you said, had we known what it would take to get here, it was like, that's okay. I'm fine. Let me go and play on the beach somewhere else. But you wouldn't change it for the world once you've grown it. Like it is
100%.
so, you're so on point. So I couldn't agree more. I love the way you explained it so intricately that, you know, every aspect, like motherhood will humble you. That's as simple as it is. And you said this earlier, is that you don't know how strong you are until you have to. So I'm like, my threshold for pain is ridiculous. Like you could pinch me, I'll scream down the house, right? So half of the things I went through, I'm like, I'm going to crumble as a mother. But you are quite right. You don't know the strength you have until you are faced with what shows up in motherhood. And just undescribable things that you thought, no, if that happened, I would just pass out and that would be it. And
Mhm.
the strength comes from absolutely, you can't describe where, but it will show up. And that's pure love. It's pure love.
Mhm.
And like you said, love through the hurt, love through the pain. And I love the distinction. I think young people really need to hear this. There's some reason why it's coming back up. When we were talking earlier, we spoke about the piece where you said that there was a distinction that you made very clear, that I don't like your behavior, but I love you. And when you
Mhm.
make that distinction, you can just see them like light up because they realize they can change their behavior, but you still love me.
Yes.
And that's so important because they're always looking for that safety, that
Mm.
consistency, that constant. And I think that's so beautiful, such a beautiful gift, Nathan.
I'm so glad you said that, because also it gives clarity on what it is they need to change. And when
Mm.
you're growing up and you've got so many decisions to make and so many things to do, having clarity is so relaxing in a way. So I need to do this for this so that I can fix this. Okay, great. I know what I need to do now. And I think sometimes when we're not clear, it causes more confusion. And I think society now, there's so much information and a lot of it isn't clear. And
Very
that's why my children get anxious and so stressed out, because it's not clear.
exactly how you said it, like context changes everything. We can work on behavior, we could do that all day long, but you, I love you. And once they know that, they'll do the inner work because they're going through it just as much as they're giving it out. So yeah, thank you. So the next thing I want to ask you is, how has societal pressures influenced the way you view and approach pet motherhood?
Hmm. I think it has and it hasn't, in the sense that I've always been a bit of a maverick, if I'm
I can see
honest.
by the smile.
Yeah. I, and so I kind of, I've kind of done things my way, um, but also had enough people around me that did things that I respected enough to say, okay, I need to add that to my toolbox. That I really respect that. I had aunties that did that, but this is where I have to give credit to the uncles as well, because I have uncles that are very discerning and very clear that, and I guess my dad too, to a certain extent, where he was very much, if you want advice, I can give you advice, but I don't want, if I have to interfere in your life, it's a problem for me. Um, so don't give me a reason to interfere. And it's that thing of, I'm going to give you all the skills that I have. And it really was do as I say, not as I do. It was that. Um, but I also have uncles that I can also go to and ask for advice. And they're very forthright in their advice, but they won't interfere unless you ask them. They're quite happy to sit and observe and things like that. Um, so there's that. But also, I had people that I worked with professionally that were very much able to advise. And I think it's always important to know the person who you're advising, because everybody has their own style. And I'm the kind of person, I like you to be very clear with me. If I do something and you don't like it, as long as you're very clear, I know what I need to do to fix that. And I also know where your line is. So if I cross it, I know that that's going to offend you and things like that. So I like very honest relationships. And even if that causes an issue, it's fixable, because all relationships should always be renegotiable at any stage. So there's that. But for me, it's always been, I'm learning all the time. So there's things that I'm going to get wrong, and that's okay. But I also need to let them know that their opinion of me is of value to me. But the way that you express an opinion is equally of value. So it needs to be respectful. Um, so I think I've had really good people around me. My village has been a secure village. And so I haven't felt the need to burn down the village for attention. I think the attention was there, but the elders in my village are very much, we know that we didn't create you. We know that God created you. Therefore, He doesn't make mistakes. So you are who you're meant to be. Our job is to do the molding and the shaping, but we do it when you ask us to. and we trust you. And if we have to intervene outside of that, it's because we've seen something that we feel is going to hurt you or affect you negatively that we have to intervene on. And so I try to do the same for my kids, for my nieces and my nephews, godchildren, and things like that. But I think I was blessed to have that.
That's
And I
beautiful.
think that for me, in a society where a lot of our kids don't have that, is important. So as a parent, I try to find people like that within my circle for my kids so that there's always somebody when
Oh,
I can't do it, that they can do it.
that's amazing. I feel that you've actually answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it because you might want to reframe it slightly differently.
Okay.
So the next question is, what role has community played in your journey, whether it's been a source of strength or something you've struggled with? But you've really leaned into it, but is it something that you'd like to expand on?
Yeah, I think also I kind of extend that to because I had the luxury of living when my mom, my grandma, and my great grandma were alive.
Oh,
And so I had that luxury. And then also my mum and her sisters all lived in the same space at one stage. So I grew up in that space. So you had loads of strong women around you, but so you saw that kind of strength, emotional as well as cultural strength. But then you'd also get to go and stay with them with their individual families, and you'd also get to be around uncles and stuff when they're around. So you saw they were very comfortable in their femininity as well. You know, my grandma, up until the age, I mean, she died when she was what, 99, and my great grandma was 100 and something. And she, she always like if a somebody was coming to her room that happened to be male, she got pedicures and manicures up until the day. Oh, she was one of them. And then she had lipstick, and she had to wear her lipstick every day. And then she had to cover her hair if a gentleman was coming to her room to visit. She was one of them. Like her and her sister were on it. And so it was that thing of, yeah, you never lose your femininity. But this was a woman that raised 9 children when my granddad passed away and ran a business. She was a midwife, and people came to her to have children and stuff like that. So, and then didn't remarry and lived with her and her mother and all her kids. And so that strength, but I very rarely heard her raise her voice. She had a tone, and it was like one not to be messed with, but she was calm. She was lovely. She was my grandma, so she always, and I was the eldest grandchild as well, so it was always a
your
special.
smile says it all. Look at you.
I know. And so it was that thing of I had it. I
Yeah.
had it, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how blessed I was, but I had it. And so when I got with my kids and their dad, it was very important for me that they have a good relationship with my mum,
Oh,
and also have a good relationship with that he had a better relationship with his mum. And so that we try and do more things together with his mum as well. So we go away and we do things like that because I wanted them to experience that, because it's a different kind of love, and it's a different kind of input. Because I think people get to a certain age and then they just say what's on their mind. And so there's an honesty that comes with that I don't think we respect and appreciate as much. And also, people of a certain generation, they're no nonsense people.
it's
So they're
true.
not trying to negotiate things with you. No, it's that. And you need to, and I
Yeah.
think in your life, you need those kind of people. You need different kinds of people so that wherever you are, you recognize, oh, this is this kind of person. This is how I work with them. This is how I maneuver. And so it always worries me when I see people like, oh, this person offends me in my family, I'm cutting them off. People have something to give you. Everybody has. And sometimes you need more of something than another. Don't cut people off. Just say, I can only spend this much time in an environment with this person.
Boundaries. I see what you
Yeah.
mean.
And that's the
Right, and I
boundary
think
that,
it's good that
yeah.
you're even bringing that up because that's a big topic. So I'm glad that you're integrating this into this conversation. And one of the things that definitely come to mind is that I find people cut people off when they don't have the family infrastructure. I think the way you've spoken about your family is really beautiful because there's so many different personalities, but there's a holding of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of families I've worked with, they've somewhat had to cut off because there is no accountability. And
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much fragmentation, this person will continue doing what they're doing and there's no real way of controlling it. But I really love how you spoke into that piece and integrated that. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Because it is, everybody does have something to give. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's like the naughty kid, isn't it? Like that naughty child in a classroom with a specific teacher, they would just wreak havoc. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if they're in a different environment and there's more infrastructure and there's certain things in place, all of a sudden that same child that used to be problematic settles. So I
Mm-hmm.
always like to, because you and I, we both work with families. When I look at families, I see the dynamics and you can see why certain things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can see that there's certain countries we'll go to go, actually we've got a lot of knife crime here, we know it just wouldn't take place in certain places. So I think that same personality is living through our families, in that certain things can just be people can get away with certain things because you just don't have the uncle's presence or you don't have the mum's presence in that level that you've been blessed with. And I think it's absolutely incredible that you grew up with you have seen your mother, your grandmother, and your great grandmother. That's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
That's amazing. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I feel sad for generations now where they don't have, because people live so far away where they don't have that.
Yes,
And
yeah.
also, like you said, the kid in the class that's disruptive and stuff is also the kid that, as an adult, will check people that know your behavior is unacceptable and stuff like that because they have a voice.
Yeah.
And so every family needs those kind of people as well that will bring things to the fore. And we need to protect those people because oftentimes we say they're problematic. They're not.
No,
They'll
no,
just deal with the stuff head on that nobody else wants to challenge.
exactly.
I
Everyone else
mean,
is sweeping it under the carpet, and you.
yeah, I
It's
like those
funny what
people.
you said, actually, what you've just said. I like that. I like those people. I like the way you said that because it is very interesting. They say that in a toxic family, the righteous seems like the problem.
Mhm.
But you flip that on its head and realizing actually we learn by holding each other accountable. We learn by drawing out and cultivating each other. And
Mhm.
it's funny because as you were speaking, I was thinking about, i I think it's Teen Swap. I'm not sure if it's Teen Swap. There is a Teen Swap, but there's another show where they send problematic teenagers to different parts of the world. Have you seen it? And then
Yes.
they act different, obviously. And I remember the woman when she's like, "You're in Barbados," and she's like, "This don't happen." So it's the same child. So,
Yeah.
like, what happens? And I think it's going back to what you're saying, is that what is the infrastructure of the family, and the
Mhm.
behaviors are actually a symptom of the deeper root cause that's happening in the families, less than the individualities. Because who are the peacemakers in your family? Who are the ones that are the warriors that will walk through fire? The chances are, like you said, it's really sad. A lot of kids are not growing up seeing that. They're not seeing that, okay, something's happened. Who's the peacemaker? And in more cases, sadly, sometimes it's the children taking on those roles because, the elders are just not taking on those roles. So I'm really
But
glad.
I think, but I think almost a generational thing in the sense that we've got some parents that sort of like 40s and 50s now who never had the opportunity to be children because they took on those responsibilities. And now we get offended when auntie's in the club because we're like, she's too grown to be in the club and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is that at what point was she given the opportunity to just be without responsibility? Because there was never that space. So now, as an adult, I pay my own bills. So now I create my space. But then society is like, no, 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 you're a certain age, you need to behave like this.
I'm
And
so
so my thing is that, yes, auntie can go to the club, but probably auntie needs to go to the club with people her own age. When auntie's going to the club with the 20-year-olds, that's a problem. But we still need to have those clubs where, yeah, you can go and get down, but societally we need to have a structure and a hierarchy for our kids so that they fit.
so
Because
sorry. someone holding the space. I love the way you're sharing this. You know, it's the level of compassion and empathy you're having for these scenarios is that instead of judgmenting, instead of assuming, realizing the journey, like what leads someone to that. And it's so amazing because if you've not got anyone in your family or in your life to ground you, you
Mhm.
just express that in a number of varied ways. And I love the fact of you saying that she's never had the time to actually be a child. She never had the time to be a teenager. She went from being a child mum to being a mum and to looking after everyone. And she hasn't got no clue where she is. So she's just going to go exactly that. I pay my own bills. I've got my place. I'm going to go out and, let my hair down. But we see it as a negative. But if we understand that all behavior is communication, we start to see things slightly different.
And
And
I don't think we create the time for context. We
context.
see something, yeah, we don't contextualize it. We see something and we make an immediate decision. And I think it's that Instagram life. Within 3 seconds, we've made a decision about this person. We don't know their history. We don't know where they came from, what they're about, but we feel like we know this person already. And
True.
so it's okay. And we've made it okay to judge rather than
Mm,
going, who is this person? I'd like to get to know them a bit more. And then it may not be your tribe, that kind of person, but it's okay because actually they may have felt heard and you may be the first person, the only person that's
exactly.
asked them about themselves and got to know them. So you've left the positive mark, even if you're never going to communicate with that person ever again. It's
So
okay.
the
We
gift of
don't,
that
we don't do
interaction.
that. You've given a gift for free and you don't even know.
That's so true. I love that. I really love that. And it's like, how can we call on that's I love when someone said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they said, be kind. And I think if we
Mhm.
can just be
That's
kind
beautiful.
more often, imagine like if we can
Yeah.
just treat each other with that level of compassion that you've spoken to, just imagine how differently we would interact. I may never see you again, but just that chance interaction, I can either deposit something in your life, but also just alleviate you of something that you've, like you said, never had a conversation before. Never, someone's never stopped to check in with you. Someone's never seen you as human. You've always been used, when you get to that aspect of being
Mhm.
used as a person, when we should use things, not people.
I saw a sister the other day on the underground and she was coming out. Funnily enough, it was at the networking event that we met at. I
Okay.
saw her coming out, and she was sporting this afro. And then I was walking. You know the way things are in metropolitan cities. Everybody's coming and going. Everybody's
Yeah.
like on a mission, so no one's stopping to their thing. Everybody's walking with purpose, having to get there. Plus, I was running a bit late as well, so I was like, and then I was like, somebody started saying, "No, no, no, you have to do this." I said, "Sis, I'm enjoying your afro. It's so beautiful."
Oh,
And she said, I don't think she was expecting me to say anything, but it was kind of like, so when I said it, I think she was a bit taken aback. I think she thought I was gonna ask her for direction. I don't know what she thought, I'm assuming. But
yeah.
then she said, "Do you know what? I really needed to hear that. Thank you so much." And then her face lit up and I was like, wow, like, so what would have happened had I not said that? Like, because she looked like she was on a mission. She didn't look particularly happy. To be fair, she didn't look sad. She just looked like, I need to
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
where I'm going. But it was that thing of, it didn't cost you anything but for a couple of minutes of your time, if that, maybe seconds. But the difference it made to somebody's day was so significant
Absolutely.
that it would have cost them something had you not shared that. And those are the things that we don't do, that we
I
should
love
do
that.
more.
That's a great example of how it works. Like I've got one of my best friends, he says he just likes to be kind for no reason. And I think there is such an emphasis needed in society. It doesn't cost you anything to just say to her, I really love your afro.
Yeah.
You
I was
need
very jealous at this point.
That's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely amazing. The next question I have is, you're doing great, by the way. The next question I have is, how do you cope with the guilt and doubt that comes with motherhood?
Faith. Faith is the bottom line for me because I have to hit my Bible every once in a while because I'm like, there are times when you know what the right thing to do is, but it's so painful to do it. Sometimes um one of my kids would do something or say something, and I'm like, no, that either it's the tone or the manner in which it's said is disrespectful. But it's kind of like, we've had such a great day together, and I was really winning on this day, but I can't let that go, because if I let that go, then it means that it's okay and you have license to do that again. So now I have to sacrifice the joy of saying that we had a great day to check you on that. But I know that if I check you now, that means you're going to go to bed upset with me, because I know you and I know your temperament, that there is no way you're going to calm down between now and bedtime for me to have that conversation with you. But I also know that I can't let you go to bed upset and unhappy. So then it's kind of like I have to come and knock at your door at a time and then say my piece. Like, I'm not mad at you. And I feel that what you had to say was of value. But the way in which you said it made me feel that you were being disrespectful. And it's the disrespect that I'm checking. But I checking you on it because I know that you, as smart as you are, have the capacity to change it. So you decide when you want to do that. But I'm letting you know that I have the belief that you will do it. And I'll just leave it at that. And you know that there's nothing coming back because they're mad at you. But your hope is that in that space that they are, they will reflect on it. And 9 times out of 10, like the next day, you'll get, yeah, I'm really sorry about this day. And then they move on really quickly. And I'm like, okay, I need a hug, because I need a hug to go with that.
Yeah, I'm a hugger.
Because I am a hugger. Because my thing is that you always need to feel that regardless of where you are, there's somebody somewhere thinking of you that loves you that much, that regardless of what you do, they will always love you. And
That's
the easiest way to express that is with a hug. So
that is
yeah, for me, fundamentally, it's faith, because there are times when I know what the right thing is to do, but I don't want to do it because it's painful, and I don't want to tell you off because then you won't like me for a time, and it's not nice. But I have to do it because in the long term, it will benefit you.
true. Very true.
But the other side of it also is I'm okay now, and I think it's taken me to get to this big age of mine to know that I can make mistakes and have that be okay, because there is a lesson in that mistake, and my job is to find out what that lesson is to move forward, and also to have enough humility in the relationships I have with them to say sorry when I need to say sorry, because it makes it then easier for them to reciprocate, because it becomes the normal in our relationship, I feel.
Do you know, for me, what stands out is the apology. I think making that a normal part of the journey of parenthood is so key,
Mm-hmm.
because I think sometimes there is this dynamics of, I'm an adult, I don't get it right, you're the child, but also the fear that if I apologize to you, I lose that respect, when actually it's quite the opposite.
Yes.
It's so important to apologize. Like, that's funny enough, I don't know when it started, but they were very young when I've always, I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I guess you couldn't understand that aspect, but I just felt the notion to actually make it normalize that an apology wasn't a weakness, it's a strength.
Mm-hmm.
No matter
Absolutely.
how old you are or how young they are, in that respect, is that if I'm doing something wrong and I know it's wrong, why should I not apologize to them because they're a child, whereas I would apologize if it was my peer? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So and faith, oh god, yeah, parenthood without faith, oh, it's by history alone, because there are some things you just can't do. And yeah, so yeah, faith, that's the fuel that keeps you going. There are
100%.
some days where you just don't have the answers. You don't know what to do.
But I
So
think also having the faith to sit in that, I don't know. And
yeah,
there is an immediate answer coming, and I
yeah,
really don't know. And
yeah,
I'm scared that I don't know.
yeah.
I should have an answer, and there isn't an answer.
Absolutely. Faith, like there are some things you can only tell God because it doesn't make sense. Sometimes, our tears are praise. You don't always have the words to articulate, but you'll get through it. But it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense right now. But it's I think what I love about what you're sharing in your journey is your character, the humility that you actually exude to be able to humble yourself for certain scenarios. And you don't, I think good leadership is always about knowing who you need to be in that moment. There is
Mm.
a time when you need to push through, there are times when you need to have boundaries. But I think good leadership is really knowing what they need at that time and being able to receive the teaching when it's not so much what we assume it is. But it's
But I
different.
think you said it beautifully when you said parenting, motherhood will humble you.
Oh God.
So you can either be humble or be humbled. It's your call because
So this exactly that. Absolutely, exactly that. And it's interesting because irrespective of your character, God will always present a child that will shift you into something that you've not experienced.
say it again.
Because I'm just looking at like, yeah, just my journey and speaking to moms and hearing your story. There is like you could have it all together. And it's
Mhm,
really important to surrender to the journey of parenting, be that the mother, the father, and obviously in this space we're speaking more for the mothers. But I think the more that we can surrender, I think the less bruising you get, because sometimes it's that fight, is that struggle. It will humble you. A child will show up and there will be things that will take place and you just wouldn't fathom where it came from. Sometimes they say, oh, children are a reflection of the home. I'm like, hold on a minute. Can we discuss that? Like, but contextually, but sometimes we don't realize sometimes the fragmentation that young people grow up in. And
mhm,
sometimes the character that they exude is just a pouring out of all of that fragmentation, not so much a reflection of any one thing. It could be collective. And funny enough, what's dropping in my spirit as I'm speaking to you is I really feel for parents that go through abuse, and that
mhm,
is the father or the mother. So what
mhm,
people don't realize is that dynamics changes everything.
mhm,
Because the moment you undermine a parent, be that in the romantic parenting or aunts, uncles, parents, you destroy that, because
mhm,
there is a hierarchical system in place. But once
mhm,
that child sees, wait a minute, you don't respect that person, they will always play parents off each other. But I
mhm,
think sometimes we're very quick to assume as society, there are a lot of people that raise their children in isolation. There are a lot of people that don't have the luxury of having friends, family around. And there are parents that will jump above and beyond to give. But that child's behavior isn't necessarily a reflection of where they're coming from. It's sometimes a reflection of that the dynamics of the family has just been very disrespectful to one parent or another parent or both parents. So I think what you've said today is so on point in that we need to be very slow to judge and be
mhm,
kinder and be open to learning and getting to know people, because everything you can possibly think of is real, and
mhm,
things that you would not even imagine is taking place. Unfortunately, I do see mothers that are abused by their children after they've been abused by the fathers. So I think I just wanted to say that for the purpose of the listeners, because sometimes it can seem very utopia, like, but not everyone has that same back.
no,
And it's, you see it in your line of work. I've definitely seen it. And sometimes, I see mums and they said, I finally feel seen, because I feel
mhm,
embarrassed to tell someone I'm going through this. But at the same time, sometimes I just need to know that I'll be okay. And
yeah.
yeah, so thank you so much for sharing what you shared.
No,
Just
no, thank you for saying that because I think often they don't feel heard, and that word shame is such a brutal word because oftentimes the people that we really need to see are the people that we avoid looking at. And I don't know if that's a conscious thing or not, because I think that as a society, we have become so judgmental that we don't challenge why the person is behaving that way. We challenge the behavior and we don't challenge the source of that behavior. And it's like you said, sometimes a kid can be involved in domestic abuse and because their environment is so chaotic, when they then come to somewhere like school, where the environment is very set and very ordered, they feel really disjointed and they don't feel safe because, believe it or not, the chaos is the safety because that's what they're used to. Yeah. And also the thing about the parent, that shame can keep people in relationships far longer than they need to be, because, and a lot of this, and I say this to a lot of mums of women that I work with domestic abuse, that we need to stop saying that a woman's worth is about her being in a relationship with somebody. If that relationship affects her well-being and her safety and that her children negatively, you need to be praying and supporting for her to get out. And that may be, and that's when she's ready, because oftentimes she may not be ready immediately. Just be the support system
Very
and
true.
allow her to do that. But saying this thing where we're almost encouraging them to stay in relationships we know are not beneficial, then we need to stop that. And I
That
think it's a cultural thing as well. We need to really work on that.
I'm so glad you said it the way you said it, because you could have said that differently. I love the fact that you said society sometimes keeps women in those relationships longer, because it's like they're going to come out and have all the judgment, and
Mhm.
sometimes the pain of that judgment is actually bigger than the pain of being physically abused or emotionally abused or financially abused, because they can't cope with what they will go through, and it's like they've jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. And I love what you said, because if we're kinder, chances
Mhm.
are people might start making different decisions earlier.
Absolutely. That's the hope. That's the hope, because I think that, we talk about what people need to do, but we also need to have grace for one another. If you are a father and you're raising sons, you as a role model, you cultivate in their mind what a husband or a brother should be. You're role modeling that. If you are a mum raising daughters, then you have that. And also, if you are a dad and your daughters are dating, the way you treat their mum, that should be their blueprint, and vice versa. And sometimes it's really small things like my sons, I hug them all the time. And I also hug my husband, and I say to them often that actually you need to understand that if you're in a relationship with somebody and you are their support system and they're your support system, so you should be able to be as strong as you are as a man and as a head of a household, you should be able to be humble enough to go and say to your partner, your wife, or your girlfriend, whoever, and say, I don't feel that I can deal with this right now. And have them be your emotional support. That doesn't take away from your manhood. If anything, it strengthens the union that you have. And likewise, she should be able to come to you and say, today I don't feel that I can handle all this load. And your first response should be, what can I take off you? It's those kind of things, and not do this thing of competitiveness. What do you bring to the table? Build the table. Stop asking me
Exactly.
what is that? Build the table and the chairs and create
Yeah,
the table. It's
yeah.
that. I think that's what we need to be teaching our kids. And when I said to my daughter before she went away, my biggest thing for you is to learn to ask people around you for help, because otherwise, if you can't say to your husband, oh, I need this or I'd like this, and be there, because you're very good at giving and doing the supportiveness, but if you don't reciprocate, you take away the joy of blessing from him.
Absolutely.
Can't do that for you. And these are the things we need to teach.
That is
And
beautiful.
so when you have a mutual respectful relationship, those other negative things don't show up because there's no space for them.
Exactly. You outweigh it with love. That is so well said. Thank you. So, so well said. And it really ties into the question around that guilt and the doubts, because that's what that is all about. And it's so beautiful that I think I find men and women need to be told. I love the fact that you hug your sons and say to your daughter, don't just do, because you teach everyone around you to just take and not give to you as well. So it's so beautiful. We scratch each other's back, so to speak. You know, everyone deserves to have that. The next thing I want to ask is, what do you wish people understood about the emotional weight of motherhood?
That it's heavy, but not in a sense of weight. It's heavy in the sense of you can't quantify what that is. And so you can't say to somebody else, this is really difficult if they haven't been through it. It's like trying to explain to somebody who hasn't been through childbirth what that is, because there's a joy in it that supersedes the pain, but the pain is very painful. And the inconvenience and all those things, and the uncomfortability of having people you don't know looking in that space, and all of those things come together to culminate this beautiful person that you're so proud of, that you love more than life itself. And so you don't have the words for it, but you know that it's something that at times can be a burden, but other times can be so weightless that you're just floating in the joy of it. And so if you've never been through it, I can't explain it to you. And everybody's experience is different. That's why you need a community of like minded people. Because even though everybody's experience is different, it's like visiting a country. Somebody will come back with pictures and it looks really nice, and you'll go to the same country, see the same scenery, but it resonates with you different.
True, very
It's
true.
like, I've been there, it was really nice. And the experience is different because you're different,
Yes.
but it doesn't take away or add anything to it. But when you speak to other people, there's a glow in that. It's like we've all experienced this, and it brings us together and it bonds us. So I think that's what it is. But whether or not I could quantify it, I doubt very much.
You've done an excellent job. You're very poetic in your response, I must say, to be honest. You've done an excellent job at actually explaining that so well. Thank you. So, next thing I have to ask is, what legacy do you hope to leave for your children?
So for me, I think I spoke to you about the sense of love and how you express that to people, and how also you should, in any relationship, expect that to be reciprocated. Um, and sometimes if it's not being reciprocated, then you need to go and renegotiate that relationship and ask why. It may be that that person doesn't have the capacity at the level you want. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that you're not good at communicating what it is that you want and you need. So there's that aspect of it. The other part is, oh, I've lost my train of thought now. Sorry. Can
Okay.
you tell
Just what
question?
legacy do you hope to leave behind for your children?
So there's that. And also for us, it's a financial legacy as well. Um, and also making our kids self-reliant. So there is something that everybody has access to, but you have to do more with it than when you got it, because there's generations coming after you. Um, but also, you know, we're building property, we're doing this and that, because I think part of that legacy is seeing what it takes to build, and also having been through the experience, be able to advise and guide, but then also say, this is where we got to. We may have only got to foundation stage. You need to be aiming to get to the first floor, generation after you, second floor. And if we're doing, I don't know how many levels we're doing, but somebody needs to get to the roof.
Yeah.
And we need to have that kind of mentality that, you know, us as the parents, we've done enough for us to be self-assured. You're not coming to look after us. We've put things in place so that we are taken care of. Your job is to do better with that. Because I think one of the things that I often see with, I think, Black families in particular, is that significantly when people do well, then they become the financial support system for other people around them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the burden. And so either they tend to gatekeep, or they tend to move themselves from other people, or they're very extravagant with it. There's like extremes. Whereas if we were able to do that, where you kind of like say to people, yes, I want to help you, but your job is to do better with the thing. Don't come and take and then go and waste it and then come back and ask me for more. No, that's
Yeah.
not what we're doing. So doing that, and for us, for them seeing that we're doing that. And so the question should be, oh, can you help me out financially? The question should be, okay, how do I do what you did?
Build on. Exactly.
So it's those kind of things. And they see us making our mistakes, and they, we talk about the dreaded word money. We talk about those things. We have conversations that maybe, I don't know, other people don't have, like, where do we want to be buried? What do we want? Those kind of things, because they're important.
Yeah,
Because
very.
we don't want that burden of when siblings are arguing amongst themselves, like, and then, this is what we're going to leave this person, this, so that it's very clear and why we're doing it, so it doesn't cause argument and confusion when
Very
we're,
true.
yeah,
You said that before. Clarity.
yeah,
Clarity gives a lot of
absolutely.
peace. It's very true. It's
That
beautiful.
for us is what we're doing. And also to have a sense of, you're from this family, who are your ancestors, what what is it for you, what do you want to achieve, and how are you going to do it, what's your plan? Because then when we speak about that openly, then if I have a skill that adds to you, I can give that, and vice versa. Because my first port of call is here. If I don't have it here, then my whole hope is that within our network, we know somebody else who has it. And we do that, and we're building and building and building, so that when grandkids come, they're building and building, and we're expanding.
So they're not starting from scratch. They're continuing
That,
what's already been. I
yeah.
love that. I love that. And it's interesting because I have had conversations with families where each generation feels like there's a big reset, that each generation has the struggle. But I love
Mhm.
the fact that you've said that they're entering into something that's already being built so they can
Mm.
continue the building. That's beautiful. Really
Mm.
nice. So how has motherhood transformed your relationships, whether that's with your partner, friends, or family?
That whole thing of, it has humbled me in spaces that I didn't know I needed to be humbled. I thought I was the patient person before I became a mum, and then I was like, okay, oh no, you need to go to another exponential on that one, because things that previously would trigger me and take me to a place where I had to remember I was a child of God. These things, these things, I had to say, okay, let me sit down, let me reset, and let me just sit with it. Because if I say what I really want to say, first of all, I'm not being a good role model. And secondly, the work I'm going to have to do to correct it and reestablish the respect is going to be a ton, and it's going to take us back to base. So let me, okay, because it's almost like you're climbing Mount Everest and you got to base camp. And if you do this foolishness here, you're going to go back to the bottom. And it already took you like 4 or 5 days to get there. And you're like, no, I can't do that again. And it's cold and I'm tired and I'm stressed. And I'm trying to breathe at this
True.
altitude as well. All
Yeah.
these things are happening. Plus, I've got a headache. It's that. And so you're kind of, okay, let me figure out. And then that, but you also know in the back of your mind that your menstrual cycle is also coming. So all these things are happening, and you haven't got time to be talking about, I'm stressed. Stressed where?
Exactly. Simultaneous, all of it's happening at the same time.
Stressed where? And then these lovely people that you love so much are coming to ask you for questions and things like that, and you don't have a break. There's no kind of, no, today I don't get to be that person. I just need a break. No, no, no. There's no break. So you're trying to negotiate all these things and be the best that you can be. And it just doesn't go the way you want. And you're just like, am I doing a good enough job? Because I'm doing the best I can just to survive. And I'm hoping
You
that's going to be enough.
so well. You delivered that so well with so much passion, but you spoke for me, definitely. Oh, that's beautiful. So you're doing a great job. So the next one I have is, what's the most unexpected lesson that you learned from your children?
Oh, the most unexpected lesson. That you have a place and you have a significant role that no one else has in the family, no one else can do. And although at times it can feel like no one appreciates or respects it, when things come together, it's the most amazing thing in the world. It's like you will have, for me, it's been that relationship with their dad that has grown. But you have conversations, little conversations, totally independent of each other. And then it comes together and you hear them talking and you hear bits of your conversation in that. And it's like, they were listening. It did get through. Okay, great. And there are times when, my son and his dad were very much at odds with each other because they're basically the same person, but
Yeah,
they were
that's
being
fine.
and so I have conversations with both of them, and whatever one said, I then go and have a conversation with another and do that. And now they have conversations, and I get to leave the room
Oh,
with
that's
their
beautiful.
conversation, and it's the most loving thing ever. And they would never say that, and they probably haven't put two and two together that you did all the groundwork for that. But because it's flourishing, you just leave it as that,
Yeah,
and you do that as a mother and you may never get recognition for it, and they may never understand that you did that. And it's the same with the girls too. You can do that. But you have that space where, because you're the nurturer, you get to do that. And you're literally going around planting seed and
yeah.
for a bit, and then you nurture a bit and you put the right fertilizer at the right time. And then it starts to grow, and you sit back and people go, "Oh, look, that plant is growing really nicely. And it wasn't there before." And in your mind, yeah, because I planted it there, but you didn't realize. But it doesn't serve you to say that. And I'm like,
Ex-
"Oh, wow, it looks really nice. It's a really nice color, isn't it?" And then it kind of feels like that. And so your value in that, but you don't need anybody else to tell you.
I
And you
love,
recognize it, and God recognizes it, and that's enough.
I love that. I love that so much because I know exactly what that looks like. Sometimes you experience something that looks like you can never get through it, but as God starts to work in the family, and as you are very obedient to the guidance you're being given to nurture and to pour love into, that is the most phenomenal part of mothering, I would say, to see those
100%.
relationship repair. And you're always hopeful, and you know that God can work, but when you actually see it manifest, priceless. The way you've described it is absolutely spot on, absolutely just incredible. The way you've said that is beautiful.
That's my feeling, and you could never explain what that is,
Yeah, no,
but
you have to experience it for you to
to
know.
another mother, they
Yeah,
get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And at every stage, like when they're little, when they're fighting over toys, and they go and make up again, they go, "I don't want the toy, I want to," they hug their brother or sister. But as they're getting older, those bonds are so sacred, because it's
Yes.
very easy to kind of say, "That's it, it's enough." So the way you've described that, it is so sacred that no one has to say anything. You don't have to say anything to them. The gift alone is just seeing it manifest. It's beautiful. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is absolutely sacred.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to ask you is, if you could change one thing about how society views or supports mothers, what would it be?
To see them as human, see them as people. And it was really interesting because we went to Australia earlier in the year, and we did the whole thing. So we went to Cairns because we wanted to see the Great Barrier Reef, and then we went to Sydney, and then we went to Melbourne, and then we came back. And one of the flights, there was a mother with her baby, and this baby would not stop crying. and you hear the murmurings like, "Oh my gosh, we've got to sit through this, da 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 da," and all this kind of stuff. And then there was, I told you, me, I'm a bit of a maverick. I could see this woman was stressing and she was doing the walking up and down. But you can see she was anxious, and I guess the baby was also feeding off the anxiety. So I just went up to her and said, "Sorry to bother you, but would you mind if I?" And the look on her face was like she looked ready to cry. And I just said, "I'm just gonna walk up and down if that's all right," and stuff like that. And she said, "Yeah, if you wouldn't mind." And it's nothing that I did. And I said this to her. I don't think she believed me. It's nothing that I did. It's just that I didn't have the same level of anxiety as she did. So when I took the baby, I was calm. So then the baby became calm. So we walked up and down, and literally we kept walking up. And initially, she was obviously watching me as her baby and stuff like that. And then after a while, I came down again and she was asleep. And so
Oh, wow.
and stuff like that. And I think she napped for a bit, and then she kind of woke up, and then sort of like, and I was just still walking up and down because it was like, I think it was like from Hong Kong to um Australia. I think it was like 6 or 8 hours or something like that. And so I was walking and stuff like that. And I think they wake you up to have your meals and stuff like that. So she said to, "Are you okay? Still home? Do you want me to take?" And she's like, "What did you do? Like I'd done something." And I said, "No, I just happen to work with children, and I know that because you're stressed, because obviously what you feel like you're upsetting everybody because kid is crying." And then she got very upset and she said to me, "I know people have paid their money to be on the flight." And I said, "But life happens. And sometimes you have to shut off from the world and just be you and your baby, and everybody else just needs to get over it because that's just the way it is. This is a baby. It's not that, you know, they're doing it intentionally.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to be okay with everybody judging you and be okay with that because that's part of parenting too." And she was like, "I hadn't thought about it like that." And I think the anxiety for her was not that her kid was crying, is what everybody thought of her as a
Exactly.
parent. And I think one of my biggest things, and this is why I do the work that I do, is that we as a society need to give parents a break. And they're doing the best that they can. And sometimes parents don't have a community, and where they don't have a community, we need to step up because what affects one affects everybody. Because when that kid stopped crying, nobody said, "Oh, fantastic, the kid stopped crying." Everybody got on with their day like nothing had happened. But when there was kids crying, that kid was crying, everybody, lots of people had an opinion. I'm sure some people were like, "Oh, I feel really sorry for this mother," whatever. But nobody was stepping up.
Yes.
And I think in society, we need to do better at that. Because, like I said, I'm a Ghanaian and we have lots of sort of like phrases and things like that and proverbs. And one of the proverbs is like, it's not just the child that you give birth to that is yours.
Yes. I like that.
So the whole community is responsible for that child because the whole purpose of our job is to make them a really sound person within the community that can contribute and enjoy being part of that community. And that takes all of us. And one of the things in society that I really struggle with is this sense of individualism. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't. And it forces people to um, butt heads with each other too much. And we don't communicate from a place of love. We
Exactly.
communicate from a place of, "I'm better than you," or "I have to do something to prove that I'm better than you." And where kids humble us, we don't stay in that space of humility long enough because they come to teach us that they need support and love, but also that we need it too in order to raise them. And I think as a society, if we grasp that more, I think we'll do better as a society because
Yeah.
everything seems to be about money and individualism. And so whenever I go home or I go on holiday and I see communities, you see that, yeah, this is why I can relax on holiday because community is what gives me the license to relax. But
Yeah.
also, when you move as a community, the load is so much less.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
we need to do that more.
I love that, realizing that parents are human. I love that. And just be kind and
Yeah.
realize that they're a part of the community instead of judging and
Yeah.
adding more stress to the situation. Step up, step up.
And if you don't know, ask. Ask. I mean, she could have turned around and said to me, I don't know you. You can't touch my baby. Go and sit down. You have to
Very
be open to that.
exactly. But you were open to asking to see anyway. So that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What's the most misunderstood part of your motherhood journey?
That I don't understand how to be a mother because I haven't given birth.
Oh, wow. Gosh, yeah.
There's a lot of that. There's
Wow.
a lot of that. Maybe in the African community, I don't know. I was speaking to my Asian friend. She said it's there too.
Wow.
That there's something about you being a woman of a certain age and not having children that's not spoken about, but it exists. And it's that thing of, it's almost like you're not good enough, but it's not said in a,
Unspoken statement, yeah.
yeah, it's not said in a negative way, but it's kind of like there's an experience that is essential to motherhood that you have not experienced. So you're not as good as, and it can be quite painful if you don't know who you are and what you're about. And again, if you don't have faith and you say that actually, this is not who I am, this doesn't make me or break me. And actually, even if I have kids and I haven't given birth to them, they're still my kids. And so I stand on that. And
Beautiful.
you have to be tough and you have to be the mother lion at times because
True.
people will come, they will step to you sometimes disrespectfully and say things like, "Oh, so they're your husband's children? No, they're my children." Oh, people do that, and they don't think they've done anything wrong, and you're like, "No, no, no. Let me correct you because we're gonna start off on the right foot. We're not doing that. We're not doing that." Or they're your stepchildren. No, no, no. They're my children.
That's awful.
It happens, but I don't think people do it with the intention to hurt. I think oftentimes people do it because for some reason that distinction is important to them for whatever reason. I think the people that are very comfortable with themselves don't do that, and they're very much, oh, okay, you're the mother of so and so and so and so. And the way God works is very funny because even though you're not the biological mother, for some reason they all seem to look like you. So people are not making that distinction unless they already know. And so yeah, people always seem surprised if for whatever reason that is made known. And oftentimes, the only time I make it known is because of the age difference. And people start doing the calculation,
Ah.
like, how old are you? And oh, okay, okay.
That's so
Like,
funny.
and it's kind of like, because you can see people do the calculation in their head, like, hey, so you, okay. And they don't want to be rude, so they don't say that. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's the only time, I think. And I think it's more of a cultural thing, I feel.
yeah. That can make that makes a lot of sense. Culturally, people tend to think they have the right to say certain things
Hmm.
without permission. Next question I want to ask you is, how has motherhood changed your perspective of yourself, your goals, and life in general?
Oh, I think for me, because my kids are amazing and they do amazing things, I have to be amazing. I have no choice.
I love that.
And then you're dragging at the back, and they're doing amazing things. So I'm like, okay,
Funny.
you you've got to get yourself together, and they're not the
Drag out
ones that are not like looking like they're going to slow down either. So I have to, yeah,
incredible.
yeah. But that
That's so
they,
funny.
they've taught me a lot, and likewise, I hope I've been able to give them back advice and support. But yeah, they're very high achievers, as are yours, and so you have to then So if you're leading the family, then you have to step up. You have no choice. You can't
Actually,
try and get in the spotlight.
you can't sit there twiddling your thumbs. They'll drag you along anyway.
100%. So yeah,
Oh, so you're so funny. The next question is, what did you have to sacrifice in order to become a mum?
I feel like I don't feel like I sacrificed anything. I had to give up time and energy. But if you see, it's like if you put in an investment and then you 100x the investment, was it really a sacrifice? It, I feel like sacrifice is when you have to give of yourself and then there's nothing really in return. You just gave it because you had to. But what I get back for the investment I've put in, it's a no-brainer. So I don't feel like I've sacrificed anything. I feel like I've given, but what I've got back has more than made up for that, I feel.
That's beautiful. Who were you before you became a mum?
Who was I before I became a mother? I feel like my whole life I've been a mother in some way, shape, or form. But I also feel like I've always been me. Um, Motherhood's not an easy thing, but I think that there's people, I think my temperament has made it easier
Mm.
for me in certain aspects. Um, I'm an energy person, and so I feel like I'm comfortable with people that are struggling. I'm comfortable with people that are happy. I'm comfortable in all those spaces. And so I feel like even when I wasn't around children, I was around children. I found a way to be around children. So even when I didn't have any biological children, I was working with children, I was looking after children. And so I don't know that, and I'm the eldest sibling as well. So I don't know if I've ever been anything else.
And the
But at
godmother as
the
well,
same
and the
time,
auntie.
but at the same time, I got to go to university, I got to travel, I got to do those things because I didn't have the parental responsibility. I didn't have to go and leave my kid with somebody else. So I did all those things as well. So I think I got the best of both worlds. But at the time when I was going through it with the IVF and stuff like that, I didn't feel that. I felt that life was unfair. But now I've got to a place where life is give and take. And so you're going to miss out on some stuff, but you're going to get other stuff as well. So I feel like I did okay. I'm doing okay. Actually, I'm
I
doing great.
re- sorry.
Actually, I'm doing great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge the work that you must have done to do the inner work because you speak about your journey so gracefully. I know that at the time it wouldn't have been easy, and it's so beautiful that you're able to recall these instances, experiences in your life, but you're able to convey it in such a way that it's a teachable moment.
Oh, thank
And
you.
that's really beautiful, it really is. So the next question is, what is the gift of motherhood?
Seeing joy in in your kids' faces, that is the biggest gift because they, and when they do things and say things that you never thought that they would, and you go, oh, and then you've got the answers to stuff, and then they go, no, it's this, and you're like, oh, okay, so all right, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you get to a space where you're learning from them and they're learning from you, and you can have those adult conversations. You don't necessarily have to be the
Yeah,
adult. You
yeah,
can be the friend,
yeah. It's very true. There
and
is a
it's not,
season when you can be the friend. It's very true.
and it's nice.
It is.
But even though you're the friend, there's still that level of respect, but you
Yes,
are the friend. Yeah.
very
And
true.
there's stuff that they won't necessarily tell you, or they'll tell you in a way that is,
Feel respectful, yeah.
yeah,
Regulated.
respectful. And then, so yeah, and
You're
it's
doing
nice.
an excellent job. Like your answers are absolutely really fruitful. You've actually gone through the bulk of the questions. We're getting towards the end. So I've got a
Okay.
couple of light-hearted questions here. Um, so the first one is, if your children were to write a book about you, what would the title be?
She's doing the best that she can.
that's nice.
I think, yeah, because I think we're figuring it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
yeah, we're
doing
figuring
the
it
best that she can. I like that. That's really nice. What's the funniest mum fail moment that you've experienced?
out. Oh God, I failed so many times that I don't know which
We've
one.
all got a lot of them, a lot to choose from.
I think. Oh, I don't know. I have to go away and think about that one. Yeah, I'd have to go and think about that because there's so many.
There's so many to choose from. Where's your go-to hideout place when you need a break?
Oh, that's my room with the door shut. Yes,
They know
definitely.
it's mum's time.
Yeah.
This one may be for more younger children, but like, what is the strangest, unexpected thing that you found in their pocket? They're a bit adults, so maybe we don't need to know what was in their pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's some strange stuff in suitcases, but yeah, we won't go
Yeah,
there.
exactly. So the next question is, if our community of listeners could support you in three transformative ways, what would you ask for?
Me personally,
Mhm.
um,
For example, like you might want to be interviewed on a special magazine that you like, radio show, TV show, opportunities.
I
Like,
think anything where I can do this work because I love it so much and help people. Um, I run courses, I do talks, I do all those things. So anywhere where I can reach an audience of people that need it, because I just feel that it's one of those things like we spoke about earlier where mothers need to be seen, parents in general need to be seen. And I think it's just in a society we're not doing as well as we should be. So yeah, if there's anybody that needs me to come do a talk, anybody that wants to come on my course, anybody that
could you tell
needs.
us about that? Because for people that don't know what it is you do, what is it that you do?
So I run a 12-week course that I created myself from all my weird and wacky years of experience, both from work and personal experience, about how to parent. And most of the work, the initial bit is just about being yourself, being a person, because you're the biggest role model for your kids. And then we talk about how to navigate through parenthood, regardless of age, because I think the fundamentals are the same, but I would say it's more teenage y and beyond.
Mhm.
And it's just, like I said, I came from a really strong community. I've been doing this work for about 30 years, and I've, been a parent or been in a parental role for as long as I can remember. And so worked in social care, worked in residential, did the whole gambit. And so putting all that into a course so that you don't feel overwhelmed because it's the hardest job in the world. And there's no sort of like, if you don't have the support system, you don't have the network and things like that, it's how to put it together so it fits for you. But I specifically work with multi-ethnic children because I feel like there's the cultural heritage and the religious faith and all those things, but you don't have to be from that heritage. But I think that the way the world is going, you have to understand it for your children to progress in society. So that's what I do. And then I'm also starting a community, a WhatsApp community, which I've invited you to. It's starting in July, where we can have conversations like this and topics and discuss things and share our experiences and lift each other up and have community where we're not always going to agree on things, but we have enough respect and love for each other that we share our experiences, our thoughts. So even if you don't have your tribe, you can be part of our tribe and learn to love yourself and be okay with yourself as a parent and not feel like you have to do it all by yourself because it's hard.
Amazing. Absolutely. So I think out of your three questions that you're asking for, I think you sort of asked for one. So you said if there's anyone that would like you to speak or do run your workshop, is there two more things that people can help you with?
Um,
Think big. Just
what,
think of if you could ask for something and someone came across it and they could fulfill it. What would it be? Do you need a building? Do you need a desk? Do you need grants, funding?
Grants and funding would be nice. I also want to work with local authorities because I feel that that really is the crux of it. We spend so much money on children and it's great, but it's like putting a plant in a soil and you haven't fertilized the soil and the parents of the soil. And we have to do so much work with the parents so that when we do the work with the kids, it has the opportunity to flourish. And I put this out there earlier in the week. I said to someone that I was working with, and I said to her, and she looked at me very stunned, and I said to her, if you gave me a school, a primary school, because now we've got kids as young as 5 that have been excluded because of their behaviour. Yes. I'm glad you made that face. Yes. And so if you gave me a school, one of your most difficult schools, and I say primary because I want to start there, and gave me 6 months and a budget for working with the parents, not the children, the parents, I guarantee that I could turn that school around in 6 months. And I put it out there.
That's incredible. You could have like your next Netflix series. You like you
Yeah.
when you go into schools and turn them around. That's amazing. I love that.
I have so much faith in parents and I've done it and I
I love
continue to
that.
do it. And I think that we need to start investing in our parents.
That is so beautiful. It's really important to invest in the parents because sometimes when you invest in the child, they go home and it creates more distance between the parent and the child and that
Yeah.
pressure that child has to carry. So I really love that. That's
So
beautiful.
if you're head of a local authority or a school and you want to take me up on that offer, let me know.
I love that. That's amazing. I would love to hear more about that. So the next question I have is what's one way that you plan on paying it forward as a result of our conversation today?
Oh, I think it's some because we had this conversation that I want to start a podcast and have these kind of conversations. Yes, you've inspired me. And the other thing is also with my girls and my boys, like my sons and my nieces and nephews and stuff like that, because at some point they're going to become parents. And so, not just yet, please. Um,
Give me a chance.
yeah, so it's kind of instilling those values in them because I think they'll be awesome parents. Um, and starting to do the grandparent thing and starting to build that kind of nest so that when they come, it exists for them the way that it existed for me. And also, like I said in the previous question, trying to work with people right across the board because this is a thing, parenting isn't a class thing, it isn't a money thing. Everybody from all spectrum, all walks of life is dealing with the same issues in various degrees.
True.
And so having people, if you work in a business, that was one of the things I said to people. If you work in a business, one of the biggest headaches that your staff have is that when they're not working with you, they're trying to raise families at home. So I want to see C-suite directors and things like that do the course because then you start to understand, and these are skills that you then take into the workplace because what it is parenting is a series of relationships. And
Yes.
so the skills that you learn, you take to other things, and it makes for a better, cohesive place. And also, if you've got parents that work for you and they're not stressing about their parenting at home, how much more productive are they at work?
True. Absolutely true. I love that.
And we need to take away that the shame of that. Like I'm not doing well as a parent. If you're doing the best you can, then all you need is a bit of help and a bit of encouragement and a bit of support and some guidelines. We got you.
I'm looking forward to seeing this. It's amazing. I'm really proud of you. Um,
Yeah.
how do you hope sharing your story on this podcast will impact others?
I think we live in a society where we feel like a group of individuals. And I think that we're not monolithic. There's so many different aspects of us. And if a little bit of something touches somebody where they feel like, oh, I can resonate with that, and they don't feel alone, then I've done my job. Because I think oftentimes we make situations far bigger than they are because we feel like we're the only ones going through it. And so when we're able to see that other people are going through similar things, listen, I do this as a profession and I struggle. So if this is not your profession and you are holding down a full-time job and you're doing all the other things that womanhood and motherhood, and yes, to the fathers out there, fatherhood does as well, and you're
True.
trying to do that and be a brilliant parent to a child, an adult, a young person who is dealing with society's issues, dealing with all the biological changes, dealing with hormones, dealing with trying to find a sense of independence, and trying to get a good 7 or 8 hours sleep because their phone is their friend and they're not sleeping well, and then trying to fit in everything and being anxious, and you feel that you're struggling, listen, you're not by yourself. Everybody's doing the same thing. It just so happens that some people are better at some things than others. Because I guarantee in some of these jobs, if you ask me to go and sit in an office and do those jobs, I'll be like, eh? Who's there? No, I can't do it. And yet, this job, the expectation is once you have a child, then you need to be perfect at the job. It's not reality. That's why we had communities before. And you'll find when you do communities, like we spoke about before, there are people that naturally slide into that maternal, nurturing role. And there's people that naturally slide into the very dictatorial, this is what we're doing, these are the rules, these are the boundaries. It may be that that is not your style. It may just be that you and your kid are very similar, so you butt heads on things. And so if you have a network, there may be something that you can say, but your sister or your brother or whatever says it better than you, and it's the same thing that you say to your kid. It just hits different.
Oh
So
my God. Yes.
just just allow that to happen. It's not a reflection of your parenting. If you're a great parent, then your network does 99% of the job. I remember, I'll just a quick anecdote. I remember when I was working in residential, and we used to have kids that when they came, a lot of them were violent, disruptive, and things like, so they'd been through trauma and they hadn't, they couldn't quite articulate what they were feeling, so they'd show you, oftentimes physically, and so they were disruptive. So I remember I was doing forest schools, so they were doing their maths work, but they were doing it in a forest because the oftentimes being in a classroom was very confining for them. But they're very smart kids. And I remember getting in the minibus with these kids, and somebody said to me, "Oh, have you read this risk assessment on these kids?" I was like, "Yeah, but they'll be fine. We're gonna," because what we used to do was go run around, and then my level of anxiety wasn't so high, so they didn't feel they had to rise to that. So I was really calm because my expectation, I was very clear on the behavior I expected, and the length of time we spent there was very dependent on your behavior. And if you were behaved yourself, we could stay and play for longer. And I remember sitting in the vehicle, and one of the kids started being disruptive in the back, and I just said, please stop, because if you don't stop, then I have to stop, and then I have to turn the vehicle around. We have to go back. And then one of the kids said, please stop, because she really means it. She's not one of those that says it and doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, when you want to laugh, but you can't laugh because it's a very sensible moment. And the other's like, yeah, yeah, she really is like, she does what she says she's going to do. Stopped immediately. Now, had they not done that, I could much see myself sort of having to stop, sit with this child in the car and call another member of staff to come and then drive us back and things like that. But because I'd done the work with the rest of the group, it made my job a lot easier because he was very much, oh, these people aren't playing. She really is that one. Okay.
Exactly. They're going to remind him this is not going to work.
Do
Oh,
that. And so there's that sense of calmness. And I always say to people, when you create community, your work is so much easier because there are people that will speak up for you.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've got to do better. We've got to almost take away the embarrassment of not getting it right all the time and go, you know what? I surrender to all you people. You people are in my tribe. I trust you. I respect you. Do your thing.
We're all on the same page. We're going in the same direction. I love it. It's such a great example of positive peer pressure. I love that. But
Yeah.
it's down and not going to work. Not with this one.
She's not one. She's not one of those that says it and do it. She will do it. So just stop.
Right, you're doing amazing. We're actually on the final 6 questions, so you've powered
Okay.
through so much. So we're just going to go to the next one now. So, as a result of this conversation that we've had today, is there something that's come to mind that you would like to say to your husband as a word of thank you or gratitude?
Just that he's amazing. He's amazing because he's been a single parent for so long, and he's never complained. It's always been his duty, but now he gets to. I think he did all the things because he needed to do them. That was the expectation. But now I'd like to think I've added the emotional element to it. So now the kids call him independently. They come and visit him independently and they spend time with him. And so now he gets to enjoy the I'm a dad, so the work he put in, now he's seeing the fruits of that. And that just fills me with so much joy. And also because it's also strengthened his relationship with his mum, we get to go away on trips with grandma and dad, and they come along. You know, it's not the kind of like we're going on a family trip and we have to force them. We're like, we're going, okay, cool. To the point where I think it was like a few weeks ago, they said, oh, so what are we doing for dad's 60th? And then out of nowhere, they were like, oh, I think we should all go on a family trip. I've heard that anywhere. I was just like, who are these
That's
people?
beautiful.
Because everybody's very individual. And yeah, it'd be really nice. We should go to Ghana for a family trip. So, so yeah,
Wow.
that's the joy. And I love the fact that he is now living that and enjoying it, even though he wouldn't admit it, but he is loving it.
I love that. I love the gift of love that you're pouring into the family, love, healing all round. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely. That's
But
so
they, but that's the thing, like you can see it because in amongst the pain is the love, but it's just not being able to be expressed. And now they get to do that freely, and I love that for them.
I love that for you as well, for all of you. That's amazing. Absolutely beautiful. That, yeah, you're making me smile too much. I've got to get through these questions. So the next question I have is, oh gosh, yeah, I can't even articulate now. Gosh. Um, what are you proud of yourself for?
Um, I'm proud of myself because I'm my father's daughter. I think that I hope he'd be proud of me. I think that now I'm able to see what my skills and my superpowers are. And for a long time, I couldn't. And and I think now I get to reflect on things and see that a lot of my experiences that I used to whinge and moan about have actually added to who I am. And I'm proud of the fact that I can do that because it's taken a lot of work and it's been a struggle at times. Um, and I think that God put me in those spaces because I'm a stubborn one, and I needed to be in those spaces because anything softer, I would have found a way out of experiencing and learning. I needed to be in the struggle so that I could feel it enough to go, I've been through it. It's like I've been cleansed, and I needed to go through the spin cycle, and it was horrible. It felt at the time, but when I came out of it, it was like it wasn't that bad. And what I left behind really made me a better person. I have a lot more empathy, a lot more patience. I'm I've always been the person that needs to see the context of a situation. I've never been that person that is everybody is thinking this about this person, so I need to go along with that. And it's made it uncomfortable at times because I haven't fitted in the spaces that perhaps I wanted to, maybe. But now I get to, now if I don't fit somewhere, it's okay. I'm all right with that because maybe it's not the space for me, because I've also found that there's places I've tried to force myself to fit and it's been very uncomfortable.
That's wisdom, absolute wisdom. I love that so much. And as soon as you said it, I I just heard the statement, what's for you will never leave you, and what's not for you can never stay. That is such wisdom. That is beautiful. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. It's like hearing all this, I am proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
The next one, you're welcome. The next one is, what do you want to say sorry to yourself for?
Um, I think I'm sorry because there are experiences that I went through where I felt like people should have shown up for me and they didn't show up, and I wasn't protected. And so I had to find the strength to protect myself. But that meant that I needed to change who I was in order to be protective, because the me underneath was always loving, caring, supportive, and I needed to build a barrier in order to survive.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I feel sorry for myself that the people that should have shown up didn't show up. But over and above that, I don't know that I made it known to them that they needed to show up, if that makes sense. So I don't hold them responsible for that. But I feel like there should have been a space in my life when I was younger where I got to be younger rather than growing up so much faster. But in saying that, also, that also helps me do the work that I do, because I see adults that missed out on significant parts of childhood, and their behavior is a reflection of the behavior that I used to show that people didn't like.
It's relatable. Yeah, you can understand it.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm really proud of you for saying that. It's beautiful. In it's sort of a continuation of, so although you're sorry, what do you need to forgive yourself for?
I need to forgive myself for not thinking it was okay to be me. That somehow or another I needed to fit
Mm,
because it made the people around me more comfortable. But when I chose to be myself, I lost some people, but it was okay. It was okay because the people that stayed were the people that needed to stay. And I've met so many other people, likewise, like yourself, who, it's really funny when you don't have to do work and somebody shows up and you go, and you're just yourself, and then they make you happy and they make you smile. And when you're in their presence, it's not even work. It's like, ah, this is how easy life is supposed to be. Struggling here, there, and everywhere. What is this? Had I known this, I could have discarded so many struggles. So yeah.
Powerful what you said. I loved what you said, that at one point you were pleasing others in order to keep them, but you were losing you. And the
Yes.
day you chose you, you released those that weren't right for you.
Yeah.
It's
But
interesting.
also you have to recognize that anything that costs you is too high a price. Way too,
Absolutely. Too expensive.
yeah, way
Too,
too
too
high.
expensive. Often, one of the things I love that comes up in coaching sessions is that a client, when they say they don't like saying no, but I always say to them, when you say yes to someone else, who are you saying no to? And they
Mhm.
sometimes get it, but sometimes they don't. They
Mm,
realize they don't have a problem with saying no to themselves. And that's
that's a lot. Wow. That's a lot.
you
Yeah.
just reminded me of that. So thank you. The next question I have is, what do you want to say thank you to yourself for?
Um, uh, but just being me. I like being me, and it's okay. I like being me, and it's okay to be me, and it's taken me a long time to realize that.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. We are actually on the final question. You've done tremendously well. So the final question I want to ask you is, what are you willing to let go of and heal from as a result of our conversation? What can you leave in this space? Just leave it and let
Um, I think a bit of fear and anxiety, in the sense that I think you raised this with me, that I can be very critical of myself. Um, but I think that stems from not having had these conversations that I'm having with you. And I think the conversations need to happen at the appropriate time with the appropriate person, because when that happens, you start to have a better understanding of who you are as a person and what you bring. And it's kind of like, oh, I'm quite valuable. Oh, okay. So I'd like to leave a piece of my wisdom, a bit of my experience, a lot of love. And my hope is that by doing that, it can reach somebody that needs to hear this, that needs to understand that whatever it is they're going through is temporary. It's uncomfortable at times, but you are the piece of coal that can turn into a diamond, but you just need to come through it. So I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me today.
wow. You actually got ahead of me, but I was going to ask you for final words for the listeners, and you just nailed it.
Thank
I thank you, just really thank you for joining me in this space. I'm really glad that you felt safe to share and open up, and just see you speak with your face. You just make me laugh. Sometimes I have to look somewhere else. But it's been a pleasure. If there's anything else you want to say, feel free to say final words. But you've been a pleasure to close.
I think that I also need to give you your flowers, because you are a person I haven't known for a very long time, but your grace and the way that you resonate with people, your energy is just so supportive and so encouraging, that I think that you were called to this position. I genuinely do. And I feel that great things are going to come from what you're doing. And I'm just blessed to have been part of it, because I feel like it's so needed. And your energy is just one of encouragement, nurture, and love. And I just hope that everybody gets to experience that, because I'm very blessed to have experienced this with you.
This has been a co-creative moment, and I receive your words, and I'm very grateful. But this is only as it is because we're both here.
That is a fact.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being present, being vulnerable, sharing, for your kind words, your love. And I really do believe that this is the beginning of something beautiful, because I think our mothers need to share their stories so other mothers can connect, but also so the world can understand mothers a bit better. So that's the end of the questioning. I'm just absolutely in awe. I've just got an outro that I want to share with our listeners, and then we'll come to a close.
I
So
just want to say one thing
go
also.
ahead.
I think I said it earlier, but I may not have. But yeah, starting a WhatsApp group for mothers to come together and do more of this. So yeah, I'll
We
drop
will be
the
putting some links in the description to your LinkedIn and socials, so they can actually follow through with that. So listeners, I've definitely attached that to this.
Thank you.
Brilliant, and well done for making sure it was in there. It's brilliant. It's interesting that you repeated it, so there's a reason. So listeners, let's turn words into action. If you're moved by today's story, think about how you can offer some support, no matter how big or small. whether it's through a kind message, shared resource, or connecting with our guest. Let's build a community that uplifts and empowers each other. Thank you for tuning in to the Unheard Cries of the Mother. Your story matters. And together, we can create ripple effects of understanding, support, and transformation. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, as mothers, we are stronger together. Until next time, let's keep uplifting each other and turning unheard cries into powerful voices.